Sansa Stark stood upon the highest battlement in the Red Keep at dawn, the gathering light revealing the city of King's Landing in all its sprawling squalor and splendor. The bay glimmered with the faintest reflection of pink and gold clouds scattered along the horizon. She felt the first breeze of morning brush her auburn hair back from her shoulders, hair she had meticulously brushed until it shone, as her septa had taught her. Yet inside her, an unfamiliar stirring of certainty and steel had begun to supplant the old illusions of a perfect courtly life. There was no child's dream of gallant knights here, no illusions of golden lion banners and queens of matchless grace who would dote upon her. She was beginning to see this court for what it was, a den of intrigue, a nest of power-hungry nobles who twisted truths and used false smiles to wield daggers from the shadows. She had not slept, not really. During the night, she had recalled her father's silences at dinner, the lines upon his brow when he thought no one was looking, the way he would push his food about his plate while his mind spun upon unknown troubles. Eddard Stark was never a man to show fear, but his absence of joy, his quietness in this place, had alarmed her. And Sansa had decided, for once, that she would not be the demure little dove she had always been told to be. She could no longer afford to be a child in a place like this. If she wanted to protect her father, and truly be of use to him, she had to become something else. She was not a warrior, not like Arya. Nor did she possess the cunning of Lord Baelish or the cunning tongues of courtiers. But she had her own talents, and if she paid attention, if she listened to the murmurs in the corridors, the gossip, the sly suggestions and the half-lies, she might glean truths that could protect her family. And perhaps, with the right words, she might open her father's eyes in time. The city began to awake far below. People spilled into the narrow streets, carts and mules and barefoot children searching for scraps. King's Landing smelled of rotted fish, tanneries, sweat, and the tang of the sea. She had once found it disgusting, but now it seemed a place brimming with signs for her to interpret. The city had grown from a dreamy wonder into a puzzle, one that might hide dangers for her father. This day, she promised herself, she would go to him, speak with him, and make him see that the Queen's friendliness was as hollow as the gold surface of the lion's sigil. She would speak every concern lodged in her heart. She would speak truth. Sansa forced herself to walk with measured grace from the battlements. She did not hurry, for she knew at court one's gait, one's stance, one's very expression could be read or misread by the cunning. She allowed her posture to remain poised, hands neatly clasped, chin high, giving the impression of a proper lady ready to serve her father's house. A pair of Lannister guards at the base of the steps paid her only fleeting attention as she passed. She smiled politely, gave them a slight curtsy, and continued on, her mind swirling with half-formed plans. Her father's solar was high in the Tower of the Hand. By the time she reached it, the day had advanced, and the corridor was alive with activity, servants hauling freshly laundered linens, men-at-arms polishing armor, and minor functionaries bearing letters and scrolls. She could hear her father's voice inside the solar, raised in conversation with Jory Castle. His tone was weary, a man who had come to King's Landing and been made Hand of the King but found no comfort or relief in the title. When Sansa stepped inside, both men paused. The morning sun angled across a broad table strewn with parchment and maps. The aroma of boiled leather polish and wax hung in the air, a sign of the perpetual readiness Ned demanded of those under his command. Sansa, her father said, standing from his seat. His gray eyes, so like a cold winter sky, seemed uncertain yet kindly. "What brings you here so early, my sweet girl?" She glanced at Jory, whose face bore a respectful neutrality, then back to her father. "Father, might we speak alone?" She tried to sound unwavering, but her voice quavered. Still, she steeled herself. "Of course," Ned said, and he dismissed Jory with a nod. The man gave Sansa a brief, gentle smile in passing, then he was gone, leaving the two Starks behind the closed door. "What is it?" Ned asked. He gave a slight tilt of his head, as if unsure of what could be troubling her at such an hour. A swirl of fear moved inside her, fear that he might dismiss her worries as nonsense or see her as still a child in fancy gowns playing at adulthood. She breathed in, summoned her courage, and said, "I have overheard things, father. Courtiers in the halls talk. The Queen, she is speaking ill of you. They say you pry into her family's affairs. She knows you are investigating the circumstances of Lord Aaron's death." People say she might be planning to discredit you before the king. Her father's eyes hardened for a heartbeat, then he sighed. My dear girl, I have known for some time that the queen would prefer me far from the king. But I am Robert's friend, and he is not a man to be easily swayed by the likes of Circe. Sansa drew closer, tears threatening the corners of her eyes. But father, please, listen. King Robert does not attend to the details of the court. He hunts, he feasts, he depends on you for the day-to-day matters, he leaves you vulnerable. The queen, she smiles and nods in public, but behind closed doors she fosters doubts about your loyalty. They say you hold the finances of the realm in contempt, that you would sell Micella off to some northern lord. Ridiculous rumors, I know, but these rumors spread quickly, and each new one is worse than the last. He glanced at the scattered papers on the table, his face grim. Yes, he said quietly, I've seen the small signs. I have always tried to serve Robert's court with honesty and dignity, yet the Lannisters move in secret. I had hoped to spare you all of this. He met her eyes, softening momentarily. I never wanted my daughters burdened by this world of plots and whispered treasons. She stepped forward, heart-pounding. But we are here, father. And as a daughter of House Stark, I cannot stand idle. If there is any way I can help, if I can counter rumors, or observe, or do anything at all, I want to do so. He studied her for a long moment, and she was sure he would refuse. But then he placed a warm hand gently atop hers, fatherly affection shining in his eyes. Sansa, you have always been my little bird of bright songs and gentle words. It gladdens me to see you so brave. I fear King's Landing may devour all gentleness, but if you can observe safely, then do so. And if you learn anything, any rumor, any hidden truth, do not hesitate, bring it to me. But promise me you will not act rashly. These are dangerous people, Sansa. She nodded quickly, swallowing. I promise. Relief and worry warred upon his face in equal measure. At last, he leaned down and kissed her brow. We shall weather this together. Outside the solar, Sansa released the breath she had been holding. She had taken a step away from illusions and into a realm of cunning and potential danger. She did not know if she had the skill for it or if fate would allow her father's enemies to remain ignorant of her small role. But she had made her choice. That very day, she made a habit of leaving the tower at odd intervals, mingling with the ladies, the maids, and the servants. They were the best sources of tidbits and secrets, for they were like 1,000 tiny birds perched all over the castle. One only needed to feed them crumbs, a flattering question here, a hint of interest there. Sansa still had the face of a young girl, a gentle sweetness, and people did not guard their tongues so tightly around her as they might around a known schemer. She learned about the unscrupulous, lavish banquets the queen sometimes held for her relatives, about shipments of coin rumored to have left the royal treasury under odd pretenses, about visits that Lord Baelish paid to the queen's chambers late in the evenings. Fragment by fragment, she gleaned that the Lannisters were forging alliances with lesser lords who were deep in debt or in need of prestige. Each scrap of knowledge she carefully wrote down on a scrap of parchment and kept hidden, reporting only the most important pieces to her father in hushed conversations behind locked doors. Within a fortnight, Sansa's presence in the halls of the Red Keep became an expected sight. The Hand's daughter, they called her. The pretty little girl. She was small enough not to be viewed as a threat. She wore her lovely dresses with modest pride, listened intently when people spoke, and let them assume she was no more than a naive noble girl with airy dreams. But behind her demure smiles, Sansa collected and remembered. She had found a weapon unique to her, the ability to be overlooked. Her father, meanwhile, was busy unraveling deeper conspiracies, about the parentage of the royal children, about the crown's crippling debt, about the strange circumstances of Jon Arryn's final days. Sansa caught only glimpses of his hunts for knowledge, but she sensed in his eyes an ever-growing weight of secrets. At night, when she visited him, he looked older, as if a year had passed in a mere month's time. The corridors had eyes and ears, and the closer he came to the truth, the more precarious his position became. Then, one late afternoon, Sansa found herself summoned to the Queen's solar. The message came through a lady-in-waiting, a tall, willowy woman with blonde hair coiled high upon her head, who knocked on Sansa's door in the Tower of the Hand and presented the summons. Her Grace would speak with you, my lady, the woman said, the curve of her lips as delicate as a hawk's. At once, Sansa's heart jolted. She had known a day might come when her meandering about the Red Keep would draw attention. Had she grown too bold? Had a stray remark of hers reached the Queen's ears? Or was it something else entirely? Her nerves buzzed as she stepped into the queen's presence, curtsying low. The queen sat near a window, where afternoon light gilded her golden hair. She was dressed in an elegant emerald gown edged with gold thread in the shape of lion heads. Her expression remained curiously unreadable, though her green eyes observed Sansa's every move. "Your Grace," Sansa said softly, remaining bowed just long enough to display the appropriate courtesy. Cersei Lannister waved a hand. "Rise, Lady Sansa. Sit with me." There were only 2 chairs by the window, so Sansa took one. A small table between them bore a crystal decanter of wine and 2 slender cups. Sansa's mouth felt dry as sand. "I have been thinking," the queen began, swirling the wine in her cup. "How lonely you must be, separated from your home, your sister grown so wild, your father busy with the burdens of the realm. King's Landing can be overwhelming for such a young lady, no?" Sansa forced a polite, faint smile. "It can be, Your Grace, but it is a wonder as well. The city is so much larger than Winterfell." The queen gave a little nod. "I am pleased to hear you find it so. We must ensure your well-being above all. You are a future jewel of this realm, the betrothed of my beloved Joffrey, and I would not want you to be tainted by the unpleasantness of politics." Sansa tried to keep her face serene, yet she felt the edges of a trap forming. She forced her voice to stay bright. "Thank you for your concern, Your Grace." The queen's eyes narrowed slightly. "I hear you've been walking the halls, speaking to many of the servants, the guards, my ladies. Is that so?" "Sometimes," Sansa admitted, a slight flush creeping into her cheeks. "I only wish to learn more about King's Landing. It is all so new to me." "And what have you learned?" Sansa paused, feigning a shy laugh. "I mostly about the city's customs. A few of the older serving maids told me stories about the Targaryens who once lived here, ghastly things. Some silly jokes about the cost of bread in Flea Bottom, or how the stable Aster once frightened a drunken hedge knight, nothing of importance." She kept her tone light, hoping to sound as though she had absorbed only trivial gossip. Cersei's smile was that of a cat. "How delightful." She took a measured sip of wine. "I must insist, my dear Sansa, if you ever come across rumors about me or the royal family, especially wretched lies, do speak to me so that we may set the truth right. I would not want you to be misled by petty rumors." Sansa's heart thudded. "Of course, Your Grace. I understand." "Good." The queen studied her for a moment. The hush in the room pressed upon Sansa until Cersei finally set down her cup. "We must be allies, you and I. You see that, yes? In times like these, the realm needs unity, especially among those who will one day be family." There was an undercurrent to her words, a steel warning behind the maternal facade. Sansa bowed her head. "Yes, Your Grace. It gladdens me to hear it." "Well, then you may go. Thank you for indulging me, my sweet girl." Sansa rose with a hurried curtsy. Her pulse hammered in her ears as she walked away, feeling the queen's eyes on her back every step of the way. She left the solar and retreated into the corridor, feeling cold all over. The question she could not escape was whether the queen suspected something, or if this was merely a precautionary intimidation. Either way, Sansa knew she had to be more cautious than ever. That evening, she found her father in the small private library off the Tower of the Hand, scouring a tome by lamplight. He barely looked up when she entered, so deep was his focus on the words. But when at last he lifted his head, relief and an anxious paternal love mingled on his face. "Sansa," he said, setting the book aside. "Is all well?" "I was summoned by the queen," she replied quietly, taking a seat on a nearby stool. "She wanted to warn me off rumor and gossip, or so she said. She reminded me that I'm promised to Prince Joffrey. As if that was enough to make me heed her will in all things." Ned pressed his lips together in a thin line. "Joffrey, the boy is your future husband in name only, unless the betrothal remains beneficial. Tell me truly, Sansa, do you wish to remain betrothed to him?" She swallowed. For so long, she had dreamed of becoming Joffrey's bride, the golden-haired prince who would love her dearly. But his cruel nature, the memory of him forcing the butcher's boy to run, the callous disregard in his eyes, had shattered her illusions. Now, the thought of marrying him filled her with a vague dread. "I don't know," she whispered, "but I'm not certain we have a choice. We are alone here, father, with very few allies." He exhaled heavily. "You are wiser than I gave you credit for. It is as you say, Cersei has the king's ear when it suits her, she has her father's gold, and she has the loyalty of many opportunists at court." He paused, drumming his fingers on the table. I have discovered foul truths about the parentage of the royal children. Robert must be told. But if I reveal it at once, the queen may act in desperation. Sansa leaned forward, voice hushed. Father, if she feels threatened, she might do something terrible. I heard from a scullion that the palace guard is rotating out many of the city watch, replacing them with men loyal to the Lannisters. If you try to force the truth into the open without caution, she might claim you plot treason. She might turn the king's anger on you. Ned sighed. Yes. You see the shape of the game. I cannot allow a false king to sit the throne, but I must find a safer way to act. We need Robert to remain on our side. The hours slid away as they conferred in whispered tones, father and daughter forging a fragile plan. Sansa felt a sense of trembling pride that he listened to her ideas, how to approach the king, how to sow seeds of doubt in him about his wife's loyalty without unveiling everything, how to secure Lord Renly's support, and perhaps the support of other lords who might hold the Lannisters in suspect. They spoke well into the night until her father finally bade her rest. Days turned to weeks. The king prepared for another hunt. He seemed more keen on escaping the city's burdens than on governing, and in those intervals, the queen's influence blossomed unchecked. Sansa continued her clandestine observations. She noted how the queen hosted private meals for certain powerful lords, how gold changed hands. She memorized which corridors the queen's kin favored for their late-night journeys. She saw how the Ares' vacant seat might have once provided a balancing power on the council, but with Lisa Tully's flight, that alliance was withering. She gleaned, too, how other houses began to sense the tension between Stark and Lannister. One morning, as she strolled through Maegor's Holdfast, she found herself intercepted by none other than Lord Peter Baelish. Littlefinger stood leaning against a column in a deserted corner of the corridor, smiling like a cat who had spied a swift little mouse. Lady Sansa, he said, inclining his head. You've grown quite into your role as the Hand's daughter, I see. She forced a polite smile, though she did not trust him. My lord. He flicked a speck of dust from his fine doublet. I often see you walking about bright-eyed as though in search of some hidden wonder. The castle is full of secrets, is it not? Sansa was aware of the watchful look in his eyes. Perhaps for those who have the wit to find them, my lord, she replied carefully. He chuckled softly. Wit and ears in every wall. Take my advice, even the walls themselves might whisper into the wrong ear. If you seek something in this castle, knowledge, perhaps consider whose knowledge you are borrowing. And to what end? She did not like the line of questioning, but she kept her face calm. I only roam to stave off boredom. My father is terribly busy, as you know. I do know, he said with a purr. But do keep in mind, my lady, that all knowledge in King's Landing carries a price. The coin might be gold, or it might be blood. A chill rippled up her spine. Thank you for the advice, Lord Baelish. He tapped a finger on his lips, eyes alight with mischief. I've always had a fondness for redheads. You remind me of another. Watch yourself, Sansa Stark. Careful where you step. She was relieved to see him drift away into the deeper shadows of the corridor, leaving her heart thrumming with unsettled energy. Was he threatening her, or warning her? Or both? She sensed that Littlefinger enjoyed the game too much. But she would not be frightened into inactivity. Her father's life, perhaps even the fate of the realm, might hinge on her small efforts. That evening, Sansa heard a piece of news that jolted her. The king's hunting party would leave at dawn on the morrow, traveling for many days. Robert intended to chase boars through the forest near the Kingswood, accompanied by a small retinue of loyal knights and a cask of wine. Sansa could already imagine how that might leave Ned vulnerable. If Robert remained away, the Queen and her father, Lord Tywin, might move swiftly to isolate Ned or press him with false accusations. She hurried to find her father, who was already aware of the king's plans. I must speak to Robert before he departs, Ned said grimly. I'll not wait for him to return, drunk and flush with bloodlust, to speak the truth. I must approach him beforehand at the dawn. Pray he listens. Her heart Hamir. Be cautious, father. Cersei, she might anticipate your move. She might contrive to have the king leave earlier than expected. Or she might intercept you somehow. Ned nodded. I have men, loyal men, who can secure me an audience. Robert may not like being approached with heavy matters just before a hunt, but I cannot let him ride out ignorant. In the early morning gloom, Sansa rose earlier than usual. She found her father armoring himself in a sense, donning a solemn face, his house cloak pinned with the dire Wolf of Stark. Together they descended to the courtyard where King Robert's retainers were already bustling, loading provisions and preparing the horses. The king was in high spirits, boasting of the monstrous boars he would skewer. Ned motioned for her to wait at the fringe of the courtyard while he went to speak to the king. Sansa stood near a stone pillar, half hidden in the gloom, watching carefully. She saw her father approach. Robert saw the king's face shift from jovial to irritated and then to mild curiosity. Ned spoke in hushed, urgent tones, gesturing to the towers of the Red Keep. Robert frowned, scratched his bearded jaw, then shook his head. Sansa could see him mouth something about later or after the hunt. Ned pressed again. This time, Robert's face darkened. He all but roared at the men around him, complaining of bad tidings so early and no time for women's gossip. Sansa's heart clenched as she saw how the king's famed temper threatened to boil over. At length, though, Robert grudgingly motioned him closer, perhaps inviting a more private word. They stepped aside, behind a wagon laden with supplies, while the hustle and bustle of stable hands and knights continued. Sansa dared not move closer, for fear of drawing attention. She watched the interplay of expressions, Ned speaking with calm intensity, Robert first scowling, then scoffing, then slowly growing somber. Robert said something, nodding for Ned to continue. Then the king shot a long glance toward the Red Keep as if in suspicion. At last, he clapped Ned on the shoulder, a gesture that might have been part camaraderie, part frustration. Robert grunted something, his mouth set in a firm line. Ned bowed, stepping away. Robert barked at his retainers to hurry, and the entire hunting party began mounting. Sansa slipped around the wagon, meeting her father as he retreated. How did he take it? Ned let out a breath. Poorly at first. But in the end, I gave him enough of a hint that something was amiss with the lineage of the royal children, that Lord Aaron's death was no accident. I told him we had proof in the library. He said, "Damn you, Ned, you'd better not be spinning me a lie. When I return, we'll speak again where no one else can overhear." He insisted I keep it quiet until then. But I fear once the queen knows what I've done, she'll move. Then we must be ready, Sansa whispered, dread filling her. We must gather allies and protect ourselves. Ned nodded gravely, looking upon his daughter with deep remorse. I never wanted any of this for you, Sansa, but yes, we must. That day, the king rode out. No sooner had the dust settled from his departure than Sansa noticed an increased presence of the gold cloaks, city watchmen loyal to the Lannisters, patrolling the corridors around the Tower of the Hand. The queen herself did not appear, but Sansa heard from a lady that she had locked herself away with Jaime Lannister and several of the king's advisors for a private conference. Sansa felt the tension coil tighter, as though the city itself held its breath. For 2 days, nothing overt happened, but the air hung thick with unspoken threat. Sansa spent most of that time in her chambers or near her father's offices, delivering updates gleaned from overheard conversations. She carefully avoided crossing paths with the queen or Prince Joffrey, though she saw the prince once on the steps, flanked by 2 King Guard, his expression bored and contemptuous. On the 3rd day, trouble arrived in the form of a proclamation. In the Great Hall, courtiers gathered to hear a surprise announcement from the Queen, delivered by the City Herald. Rumor had it the Queen was about to name new appointments to the City Watch or something of that nature. Ned insisted on attending, and Sansa, with her father's permission, followed at a discreet distance, standing among minor ladies near the columns. Cersei Lannister presided over the dais. She wore a regal gown of crimson, her golden hair braided and coiled like a crown. Her voice, when she addressed the throng, carried with it the promise of finality. By the authority of the Iron Throne, she declared, and with the king's interests in mind, I have decided upon certain reassignments to ensure the realm's safety and prosperity in his absence. Her green eyes scanned the hall, alighting briefly on Ned Stark. Sansa's stomach roiled. She could see the queen was out for blood, or at least out to neutralize her father's influence. As of this day, the queen continued, Lord Janos Slynt has been elevated to the rank of Master of Laws, while Ser Boros Blunt shall command a detachment of the City Watch loyal to the crown. My father, Lord Tywin Lannister, has graciously arranged additional gold to secure the city's defenses. She gestured at a pair of heralds who unfurled new scrolls. Furthermore, in the king's absence, I shall direct matters of the realm through the royal council. The Hand, Lord Stark, will continue in his duties, but the council shall be restructured to ensure a balanced perspective so that no single voice drowns the others. A murmur rose in the hall. This was, in effect, a diminishment of the Hand's authority. Ned Stark, who had been given broad power by the king, was now being subtly checkmated by a queen who claimed to want balance. One of the heralds began reading a list of new council members. 2 of them with ties to House Lannister, one a known crony of Littlefinger's. Sansa saw her father's face, stony with fury beneath his courtesy. He stepped forward, intending to protest, but the queen, as if anticipating him, held up a slender hand. I am assured by the Master of Coin that these measures are temporary, she said smoothly. We trust Lord Stark will continue to serve the realm faithfully as he always has. Ned's voice cut through the hall. I was appointed hand by the king. It is his prerogative, not yours, to reassign or curb that office. Unless you claim to speak for King Robert in all matters of state. A hush fell. The queen's lips curved into a slight, mocking smile. Why, Lord Stark, I speak in the king's interest while he is away. Surely you do not think he would object to prudent measures to keep the peace. Ned forced a tight smile. I shall continue to serve the realm so long as I have the king's confidence. Should Robert return and disagree with these changes, they will be undone. Cersei's eyes flashed. We shall see, my lord. The hall buzzed with tension. Sansa felt her palms dampen. She recognized that in this public forum neither side would openly declare war, but the hostility was palpable. She found herself clenching her fists beneath her sleeves. Had she not spoken to her father, had he not warned the king, perhaps Cersei would have enacted something more dire this day. But still, she had struck a blow against Stark's authority, a cunning one, setting the stage for a possible confrontation if Ned tried to unravel her plans further. In the wake of that assembly, the mood in the Red Keep grew charged. Ned Stark's loyal men walked the corridors with hands near their sword hilts. The gold cloaks eyed them warily, mindful that their loyalties might soon be tested. Sansa retreated to her chambers, unnerved by the sense of looming conflict. She found that sleep eluded her once again. In the middle of the night, she heard stealthy movement outside her door. She rose, heart pounding. Could it be the queen's men? Was she about to be taken? She took hold of a small knife kept on her bedside for trimming threads, hardly a weapon, but better than nothing. Sansa came a whispered voice. She recognized it as Jory Castle's. Relief rushed through her. She unlatched the door and opened it a crack. He stood there in the moonlit corridor, face drawn. Your father needs you. Dress quickly, come at once, he said. She hurried. When she emerged in a plain cloak, he guided her through winding halls and up a narrow stair until they reached her father's private solar. The door was barred from within, and at a special knock from Jory, it opened. Sansa stepped inside to find her father and a few trusted men, Harwin, Vayenpool, and a couple of guards clustered around a table. Ned looked up from a parchment. He appeared aged by worry, but a hint of relief lit his eyes at seeing his daughter. Sansa, he said, I'm sorry to drag you here, but events are moving quickly. I want your counsel. You've heard more whispers lately than I. His words touched her, though her voice trembled. What has happened, father? He passed her the parchment. A messenger arrived not an hour ago. Robert has been gravely injured on his hunt, mauled by a boar. He is being brought back to the city. Shock lanced through her. Injured? How badly? Ned grimaced, pressing a hand to his brow. Bad enough that they say he might not survive. The men who came with the messenger said the king bled heavily and was half mad with pain. Renly is riding hard to find a maester, but they doubt he can last long. His gray eyes held a sorrow that cut her deep. Robert, my old friend. This changes everything. She realized the implications at once. If the king died, the throne would pass to Joffrey, or so the realm would believe. The queen would become regent, unless Ned exposed the truth in time. Cersei would not let that happen. She would move quickly, possibly arresting or eliminating Ned to keep him from naming Robert's true heir. It dawned on Sansa how precarious their situation truly was. Father, she said urgently, we must be careful. If we say the children are not Robert's, the queen could turn the gold cloaks and the Lannister forces on us before we can speak. And if the king is too weak to confirm your claim, Ned nodded, voice bleak. Exactly, but we have no choice. If Robert dies, a bastard cannot claim the throne. Stannis Baratheon is the rightful heir by law, unless we want to see the realm in chaos. I must act swiftly, or the realm will plunge into civil war. What do we do? She asked, fear and determination warring in her chest. Ned looked at his men. Jory, Harwin, you will gather the loyal household guard. Quietly, avoid confrontation if you can, but be prepared to hold off any attempt to arrest us. Vayen, secure our ledgers and the proof we have. Sansa, he hesitated. You have done so well, child, gleaning the whispers. I wish I could keep you out of harm's way. But your knowledge of the Queen's likely allies at court may be crucial. If it comes to it, we must present the truth swiftly and gather support from those lords who might be hesitant to side blindly with the Lannisters. I will help, she said, her voice surprisingly steady. Tell me what to do. He placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Tomorrow morning, I will go to the throne room if the king is truly dying. I will present the king's last orders. He has named me regent in the event of his death. That will give us legal standing, enough time to reveal the lineage truth. But if the queen tries to seize me, or to name Joffrey king at once, I want you to find Lord Renly or Ser Barristan Selmy, anyone who might stand with us. Show them the documents we prepared. They must not let the Lannisters silence the truth." Fear hammered in her chest. This was high treason or the saving of the realm. Either way, it was dangerous. "I understand." He looked at her with solemn pride. "We Starks must stand together." At dawn, word arrived that the king's party had returned to the city. Robert Baratheon lay in his chambers, mortally wounded. He had demanded to see Ned alone. As Ned prepared to go, Sansa clung to his hand for a brief moment, mind swirling with worry for him and, in some fragile corner of her heart, pity for King Robert, the man whose presence had once made her father laugh like old friends. Ned left with 2 guards, leaving Sansa behind to await the outcome and to fulfill her role if something went wrong. Time passed in agonizing slowness. Eventually, a steward emerged with news. The king had commanded Ned to draw up his final will, naming him protector of the realm until Joffrey came of age. Ned, so the steward said, was fulfilling that task now. Whether or not Robert truly understood the ramifications or whether Ned would alter the text to reflect the illegitimacy of the children was unclear. Sansa suspected her father would take a middle road, referencing my rightful heir without naming Joffrey directly. Her tension only grew when, an hour later, the Red Keep's bells tolled ominously. Robert Baratheon was dead. His passing sent a shockwave through the castle. Courtiers began to gather, whispering, rushing about. Sansa pressed her hands to her cheeks, heart pounding. The moment of truth would come soon when Ned entered the throne room to read the king's final testament. She managed to slip inside the throne room through a side entrance, concealed behind a row of carved pillars. The grand chamber was lit by morning sun streaming through high windows. The Iron Throne loomed at the far end, a silhouette of twisted steel swords. The hall was filling, lords, ladies, guards. The queen glided in, wearing a dress of deep black trimmed with gold, signifying mourning. Joffrey followed, head held high, face pale but hard-set. The king's guard arrayed themselves around the dais. Ned Stark entered moments later, accompanied by several of his men who fanned out behind him protectively. He carried a parchment sealed with a royal sigil. Sansa watched from her hidden position, praying the next few moments would not end in bloodshed. Cersei's voice rang out. "Lord Stark, the king is dead, and my son Joffrey is the rightful heir to the Iron Throne. Kneel and swear fealty to your king." Ned's jaw set. He stepped forward, unrolling the parchment. "Before he died, King Robert left orders. He named me protector of the realm to rule until his rightful heir comes of age." The queen's lips parted in a haughty sneer. "We are aware of this. But your regency is not needed, my lord, for Joffrey is old enough to sit the throne. He is nearly a man grown. Give me that parchment." Ned refused. "I shall read it first." He began to recite, "I, Robert of the House Baratheon, first of his name. Do hereby command Eddard Stark, Lord of Winterfell, to serve as protector of the realm upon my death, to rule in the name of my rightful heir until said heir come of age." "Stop this at once," Cersei snapped, taking a step forward. "The rightful heir stands here." "My son, you forget yourself, Stark." Ned drew himself up. "I do not. Your son," he looked at Joffrey. "He is no Baratheon." The words sent a ripple of shock through the hall. Some gasped. Others murmured. Sansa saw the confusion on many faces, the flicker of alarm on some. Joffrey's expression turned to outrage. Cersei's face went pale with fury. "How dare you?" she hissed. "Ser Boros, seize him." The gold cloak stirred. But Ned held the parchment high. "I have proof, my lords. The children of Queen Cersei are fathered by her brother, Jaime Lannister. They bear none of King Robert's features." "Lies!" Joffrey shouted, his voice cracking. "Guards! I am your king." The tension snapped. The gold cloaks advanced uncertainly. Ned's men stood ready. Voices rose in confusion and protest. Sansa swallowed hard. If the situation devolved into chaos here, they would be overwhelmed by the Lannisters' greater numbers. She scanned the crowd for a friendly face for Lord Renly or Ser Barristan. Cersei, regaining her composure, turned to the city watchman. "Arrest Lord Stark for treason," she commanded icily. For a moment, the gold cloaks hesitated. Then their commander stepped forward, but a cry rang out, "Hold!" as another figure entered. Ser Barristan Selmy, the Lord Commander of the King's Guard, strode into the room, flanked by 2 other knights of the King's Guard. His weathered face was stern and troubled. He looked at Ned, then at the Queen, then at Joffrey. The hush was deafening. Ser Barristan spoke in a resonant voice. The King's final command was to name Lord Stark Protector of the Realm. I cannot in good conscience ignore that command, Your Grace. If the boy is truly Robert's heir, prove it. Let there be a full hearing. Cersei's eyes blazed. You forget your place, Ser Barristan. The King's Guard obey the crowned king. He did not flinch. We obey the rightful king. Lord Stark claims proof these children are not of Robert's blood. The matter must be judged by the realm. Ned seized the moment. Summon the great lords. Summon Stannis Baratheon, the king's eldest brother. If Joffrey is truly of Baratheon blood, let it be so proven. The room seemed poised on a knife's edge. Cersei exhaled, her face twisted in rage. This is absurd. My son will be king. Any who question it question the authority of the Iron Throne. They shall die as traitors. Ser Boros, Ser Meryn, cut down the traitors. But a sudden cry erupted from behind Ned. Lord Renly Baratheon, accompanied by a small retinue of soldiers, pushed into the throne room. Renly's face was grim but determined. I stand with Lord Stark, he declared loudly. My brother's last will must be honored. If Joffrey is truly of Baratheon blood, then let it be proved. Chaos threatened. The Gold Cloaks, seeing they were outnumbered by the combined loyal retinues of Renly and Stark, held back. Cersei's eyes darted around the hall. She realized the precariousness of her position. If she gave the order to attack now, she risked open bloodshed with no guarantee of victory. It might be the start of a war she could not win in the short term, especially if the City Watch was not fully under her control. Sansa saw the cunning in Cersei's gaze flicker, swiftly calculating outcomes. The Queen's jaw tightened. You will regret this day, she said at last. We shall see who the realm truly supports. This is not finished. In that moment, Ned stepped before Joffrey, bowing with stiff formality. If you believe yourself to be the true son of King Robert, you must permit the realm to confirm it. We ask only for time to summon the lords and have the maesters confirm the lineage. You shall have every courtesy in the meantime, for I do not desire bloodshed. Joffrey looked enraged, but uncertain he glanced to his mother. Cersei's face was cold as stone. The tension in the hall refused to dissipate entirely, but the confrontation had reached a standstill. At length she snapped, so be it. Gather your evidence. We shall see how Stannis or any other might dare to claim the throne over my son. She turned and swept out of the hall, the Kingsguard trailing behind, Joffrey spitting curses under his breath, forced to follow. The Lannister men in the hall withdrew in tense formation. Sansa, still hidden among the columns, breathed a trembling sigh of relief. Within the hour, Ned, Renly, and their allies secured the Red Keep's gates and arranged for a formal inquiry. The Queen and her son retreated to their chambers, apparently waiting for Tywin Lannister's reinforcements or for an opportunity to strike. But crucially, Ned had not been seized nor publicly labeled a traitor. He remained protector of the realm as per Robert's will, at least for the moment. That gave him and his allies a measure of legitimacy. In the privacy of the Tower of the Hand, father and daughter embraced. Sansa trembled with the aftermath of terror and relief. Ned stroked her hair, his voice laden with weariness. We've gained a small respite. We must make good use of it. Word must be sent to Stannis at Dragonstone. Sansa looked into his eyes, which shone with pride mixed with sorrow. You did it, father. You faced her down. He managed a faint smile. Not alone. You aided me, Sansa, more than you know. Had I not known the depths of Cersei's ambition, had I not been so prepared, we might all be in chains. She took his hand. What happens now? War may yet come, he admitted softly. The Lannisters will not relinquish the throne so easily, nor is Stannis the kind of man to accept compromise. The realm is on a precarious edge, but we have prevented the Queen from striking a mortal blow against us. For now. Sansa swallowed, feeling a stirring of hope. The illusions she once cherished of becoming a beautiful, beloved queen were gone, replaced by the reality of an unfinished struggle. Yet she had chosen to act, to be more than the wide-eyed girl who dreamed of songs and chivalry. In this moment, at least, she felt pride that she had helped spare her father the fate that might have claimed him if events had gone differently. Evening settled, and the flickering torchlight gave the corridors an eerie glow. Sansa glanced out a narrow window at the city below. King's Landing seemed restless, as though the city itself sensed the precarious shift in power. She prayed that her father's caution and the alliances he forged would be enough to hold back the tide of civil war. For though they had averted one danger, many more lay coiled in the shadows. Word would spread quickly, ravens bearing tidings of the king's death and the disputed succession. Lords both great and minor would have to choose a side, back the claim of Joffrey Baratheon Lannister, or support the rightful Baratheon heir, Stannis. The queen would not sit idle. She would muster her father's forces, the gold of Casterly Rock and the cunning of her kin to ensure Joffrey's crowning. The faint taste of ashes filled Sansa's mouth at the thought of how violently these issues could be decided. Yet as she gazed out over the city, she felt no regret for her part. She thought of Arya, wild and free, and Bran and Rickon far away in Winterfell, and of Lady Catelyn who had never wanted them to come to this dangerous place. Sansa had chosen a path that might ultimately protect her father and, by extension, her family. She would not question it now. That night, Ned Stark called a solemn meeting of his household guard and his allies in the throne room, which was deserted except for a handful of guards. He ordered them to secure all entrances, to stand watch, to prepare for the possibility that Lannister forces might attempt a coup at any moment. Sansa watched from the sidelines, quietly absorbing the gravity of his words. She saw men strapping on armor, sharpening blades. It felt too close to war for comfort, yet she knew the alternative was helplessness. Her father beckoned her aside. "I have no illusions about what tomorrow may bring," he said quietly. "The queen might attempt to have me killed or arrested before the great lords can be gathered. I want you to stay close by or remain with Renly's household if it seems safer. And if something ill befalls me—" "Father, do not speak so," she protested. He shook his head, as kind but unwavering. "Sansa, I must. If something happens, I want you out of the city. You and Arya both. Return to Winterfell if you can, or go to your mother. I only ask, do not let your fear paralyze you. If you must flee, flee swiftly." She felt tears threaten, but she nodded. "Yes, father." He pulled her into a warm embrace. In that moment, she felt again like a small child safe in Winterfell's halls. But that safety was only a memory. This was King's Landing, where shadows lengthened with every passing hour. The next day dawned with a strange hush over the castle. By mid-morning, the queen emerged from her chambers, flanked by the king's guard. Joffrey wore black mourning clothes, but no crown yet. They demanded that Ned attend an audience in the throne room. Sansa, with her father's permission, accompanied him, feeling tension coil inside her once more. The hall was lined with men from both sides. Renly stood behind Ned, arms folded. Ser Barristan looked solemn, while Littlefinger lounged off to one side, expression unreadable. Varys the Spider hovered at the periphery, eyes darting. Cersei began with forced, regal composure. "Lord Stark, you and I have unfinished business. We cannot keep the realm waiting. My son is the king. Will you kneel to him and renounce these false claims of bastardry, or must we settle this with steel?" The hush was deafening. Ned lifted his chin. "I serve the realm and King Robert's final will. I cannot kneel to your son when I know he is not the king's blood." Joffrey's hands trembled in fury. "Guards!" Cersei lifted a hand to still him, her expression cold and triumphant. "You see all? Lord Stark defies the throne." Before any guard could move, Ned's voice rose, echoing in the vaulted chamber. "Varys, summon the maesters with the records. Summon the great lords to witness. Or do you fear the truth so much, your grace?" He locked eyes with the queen. She said nothing, but he saw the flicker of doubt in her. Then Renly strode forward. "I demand that, as the king's own brother, I be permitted to speak. If Joffrey is truly my brother's son, I shall kneel to him myself. But if not," he left the sentence hanging. Ser Barristan spoke as well. "This is a grave matter. In the absence of proof, the realm will fracture." The tension was unbearable. Cersei's eyes flicked across the hall. Then Sansa noticed something. A faint hesitation in the gold cloaks. Their loyalty was not as sure as the queen might have hoped. The presence of Ned's men, plus Renly's small retinue and the moral weight of Ser Barristan's stance made a direct confrontation hazardous. At last, Cersei hissed, "Very well. Let the lords gather. Let them see how I deal with traitors. But Joffrey shall be crowned soon, and all who stand in his way shall pay." And so the day ended in stalemate again. Messengers were sent across the city. Lords began to arrive, forming uneasy camps in King's Landing. Tywin Lannister was rumored to be marching with an army. Stannis, so rumor said, was rallying his banners at Dragonstone. The city held its breath. And in the midst of that swirling tension, Ned and Sansa found themselves locked in a delicate waiting game, having narrowly prevented an immediate Lannister coup. Yet Sansa knew the respite was tenuous. The queen's eyes burned with hatred, and Joffrey's temper would not be contained for long. War simmered on the horizon like a storm gathering. But for now, Ned Stark still lived, still wore the mantle of protector, and the Lannisters had not seized power outright. It was a fragile, trembling victory, a chance bought by that morning's stand, by the careful gleaning of rumors, and by Sansa's resolve to aid her father rather than remain a passive onlooker. That evening, Sansa stood on a balcony overlooking the city. The sun dipped low, painting King's Landing in shades of blood orange and purple. She thought of the Targaryens who once ruled here, then of Robert's rebellion and of how the wheels of power had turned, leaving new conflicts in their wake. The realm seemed always poised at the edge of violence. She gripped the stone railing, letting the warm wind carry the smells of the city to her. Beneath her fear, she felt a resolute spark. She had found a way to act, to fight not with steel but with her ears and her eyes, and most of all with her loyalty to her father. The game was not over. It had only just begun. Nightfall brought no comfort. Servants whispered of men in gold cloaks skulking through the halls and of ravens bearing secret messages in and out of the city. Sansa made her rounds carefully, gleaning what she could. She slipped into the kitchens, listening to the talk of the cooks. Half the men at the table had heard Lannister men boasting about how Tywin would soon descend upon the capital. In the outer yard, stable hands muttered that the queen might flee with Joffrey, or she might have them ride to intercept Stannis. Fragments of rumor, none certain, all swirling in a tempest of looming war. She relayed all this to her father, who pressed his lips thin and nodded. Tywin's approach changes much. If he arrives with a host, we may not be able to prevent a full-blown conflict. Our best hope is that the great lords in the city stand for truth and law, forcing Cersei to yield. But the Lannisters are cunning. They might attempt some sudden strike before then. That same night, Ned gathered Renly and Ser Barristan in the Tower of the Hand. Lord Baelish, invited but absent, sent word he was occupied. Varys hovered at the edges, offering mild observations about how the realm bleeds while ambitious wolves and lions play. Sansa stood quietly in a corner, hearing bits of the discussion. Renly insisted that Stannis would make a poor king, rigid, unyielding, unloved. Better to crown Renly himself, the younger brother, beloved by many. Ned, though, was unwavering about the line of succession. It is not about who we like, Renly. The law is the law. Renly bristled, but let the matter drop. For the moment, their alliance was too valuable to risk over the question of who might ultimately sit the throne. They agreed that if Cersei or her men attempted a coup, the combined forces loyal to Ned and Renly could occupy the Red Keep's critical points. Ser Barristan, though uneasy, indicated he would not stand aside if the Queen tried to circumvent the rightful process. It was a dangerous plan, and with Littlefinger absent, they could not be certain whether the City Watch would turn coat for Lannister gold. Sansa shivered, sensing how the entire city balanced on a knife's edge, one misstep away from bloodshed. But for the second time, she was glad that her father had her by his side, her father, who might otherwise have been isolated and outmaneuvered by the Queen's cunning. Now he had Renly. He had Barristan's reluctant vow. He had glimpses of Lannister intentions gleaned from Sansa's quiet ears. In the days that followed, word arrived that Tywin Lannister was indeed marching but had been delayed. Stannis gathered forces of his own, rumored to be sailing to the mainland. The Queen, forced into a stalemate, had to endure Ned Stark's presence in the Red Keep while more lords arrived to hear the matter of succession. The tension was thick enough to taste. Sansa discovered she could not rest easily, for at any moment the fragile peace might shatter. Still, each dawn that came without open war felt like a small triumph. At last, the day arrived when the great lords present in the city convened in the throne room. Cersei stood beside Joffrey, who was perched on the Iron Throne. Ned stood at the base of the steps, flanked by Renly and Ser Barristan. The assembled lords and ladies pressed in, forming a wide ring. Sansa found herself among them, heart racing, yet determined to witness what might be the final confrontation. Lord Baelish stood to one side, expression calmly detached. Varys hovered next to him, looking pensive. The hush in the chamber was absolute. Joffrey's face was pale but set, Cersei's eyes blazing with defiance. Ned, standing tall, began to speak. We are here to resolve the question of the throne. King Robert is dead. According to the laws of the realm, the throne passes to his eldest lawful heir. We have reason to believe that Prince Joffrey, Princess Myrcella, and Prince Tommen are not Robert's true children, but those of Jaime Lannister. Outrage erupted from one corner of the hall. Some lords gasped, some shouted in protest. The dwarf Lord Giles coughed violently. Others demanded proof. Ned gestured, and Vayenpool, his steward, presented the genealogies and other proofs. Ned read from them methodically, explaining the coloring of Baratheon offspring, the unbroken line of black hair, and the truth that Jon Arryn had died discovering. All the while, Joffrey sat stiff, glaring furiously, his nails digging into the arm of the throne. Cersei's face was a mask of fury. When Ned finished, the hall was in uproar. Some demanded that Joffrey be seized at once, others roared that Ned was a traitor. Guards shifted uncertainly. But Ser Barristan and stood by Ned, and so did Renly, and that counted for much. The City Watch, commanded by a newly appointed officer somewhat loyal to Littlefinger, hesitated. Sansa could see the indecision in their eyes. Gold might buy them, but a single misstep in the presence of so many powerful lords might prove fatal. At length, Lord Baelish stepped forward with feigned calm. "My lords, we have heard charges of the gravest nature. The realm is in disarray. Perhaps it would be prudent to let cooler heads examine the evidence behind closed doors, away from the heat of the moment." He cast an almost pleading look at Ned, who ignored him. Cersei used that opening. "Yes, we should. My son's legitimacy should not be determined by hysterical allegations in front of a mob." She placed a protective hand on Joffrey's shoulder. "I will not stand by while you spit on my children's birthright. This is an outrage." Ned said firmly, "If your children are truly Robert's, let the realm's maesters and lords confirm it. If not, the rightful heir is Stannis Baratheon." Chaos rose again. Some lords shouted for Stannis, others for Joffrey. The Lannister men began pushing through the crowd. Sansa feared open bloodshed once more. Then, unexpectedly, Joffrey rose from the throne. He looked down at Ned with eyes bright with anger and hatred. "You dare slander me?" he demanded. "You dare question my right to be king?" He turned to the crowd. "All of you, hear me. I am the king, and I will have the traitor's head." He reached for the sword at his waist. But Ned, though unarmed save for the legal authority granted him, raised a hand in a calming gesture. "Prince Joffrey, do not let your anger rule you. If you truly wish to sit the throne, prove your birth. That is all we ask." His voice rose. "Kings should have no fear of truth." A swirl of gold cloaks started forward, but Renly's men blocked them. The narrow line between order and chaos frayed. In that instant, Sansa was certain fighting would erupt. But then Ser Barristan and Selmy strode up the dais. A hush fell. Barristan placed himself between Ned and Joffrey, his white cloak trailing behind him, sword in hand but pointed at the ground. He knelt, looking up at the boy. "My prince," he said, "I have served the crown for many years. I served your father, Robert, and before him, the Mad King. My duty is to protect the rightful heir. Will you allow the realm to question your birth? Or must we see blood spilled in the throne room of your ancestors?" Joffrey's face tightened. His hand gripped his sword's hilt, knuckles white. For a moment, it seemed he would lash out. Then Cersei placed a hand on his arm, softly, as if pleading with him. Perhaps she realized they were outnumbered in that moment, or that no matter how many swords the Lannisters had, a massacre in the throne room would not secure her child's crown in the eyes of the realm. Joffrey hesitated, his face tortured by wounded pride and fury. Finally, he spat on the floor in front of Barristan's feet. "Have your hearing, then. But it will end in your heads on spikes, all of you." The tension in the hall broke, replaced by uneasy murmuring. Ned exhaled, shoulders sagging slightly in relief. Sansa felt weak with it. They had avoided immediate violence again. Yet Joffrey's words promised a bitter future. Cersei looked as if she wanted to unleash the gold cloaks right then, but the precarious balance of forces stayed her hand. She gestured to her guards, and together with Joffrey, they retreated from the throne, ignoring the stares of lords who parted to let them pass. As the queen and prince left, a wave of clamor followed. Some in the crowd demanded a regency under Ned Stark. Others whispered that Stannis must be summoned at once, that the city might soon be under siege if the Lannisters called their bannermen. Ned's men formed a protective ring around him, while Renly's men added their support. Sansa watched them, her throat tight. She realized that open war had likely been postponed yet again, but not forever. The seeds of conflict were sown. At Ned's side, Renly exhaled in relief and turned to him. "We must summon Stannis, gather the lords in council, and settle this quickly, or the Lannisters will never yield." Ned nodded. "Agreed. Let us proceed. The realm's peace depends on it." Barristan quietly rose from his kneeling posture. He looked old and weary, but resolute. "I will see this through," he said, "though it may cost me everything." The hall began to empty, courtiers drifting away, uncertain. Sansa found her father's eyes and stepped closer. She felt the lingering adrenaline in every limb. "Father, is it really over?" He placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "No, child. But we have gained time, and time may be our only ally right now." She tried to steady her breathing. "Then we'll use it." That night, father and daughter returned to the Tower of the Hand, passing lines of stoic guards. They had succeeded in preventing the immediate downfall of House Stark, had thwarted the Queen's machinations against Ned, and had forced the question of succession into the open. It was an achievement that Sansa could scarcely believe. She recalled how in another, darker twist of fate, her father might have been seized in the throne room, his men slaughtered. The realm would have woken to discover the new King Joffrey with Ned Stark named a traitor. Instead, there remained a chance, narrow and perilous, that truth could prevail in a more lawful manner. A chance that Stannis might be recognized as Robert's heir without the city drowning in blood. A chance that the House of Stark might remain standing. Sansa knew well the game was not finished. The Queen had not yielded. The Lannisters still had armies and cunning. But as she lay in her bed that night, exhausted but unbroken, she felt a flicker of pride in how she had stepped beyond the confines of her old self. She had faced the court, gleaned the whispers, risked the Queen's wrath, all to help her father. And though the future was uncertain, she would face it with open eyes, determined to protect her family, no longer the naive little girl dreaming of lemon cakes and heroic princes, but a young woman forged by the dangerous intrigues of King's Landing. If Cersei Lannister thought she could break the Starks with a single blow, she had been proven wrong. Sleep overcame Sansa eventually, yet her dreams churned with images of the Iron Throne, swords glinting, ravens crying out warnings in the night. She woke at dawn, the city's bells still silent, the sky tinted pale gold. The hush that lay over King's Landing felt like an unspoken question. What now? Rising, she walked to the window and gazed out at the sprawling metropolis. She thought of her mother, her siblings at Winterfell, and all that had led her to this moment. A sense of resolve filled her. Whatever came next, councils, alliances, the return of Stannis, she would face it as best she could, standing by her father's side, mindful of the power and peril that words could wield. Perhaps the songs she once adored had been illusions, but she had discovered a different kind of strength. She closed her eyes, breathing in the new day, and prepared herself to see it through, no matter the cost. End. Sansa Stark woke to a pale dawn sky that reminded her of the northern snows, a cool gray sliver of light cast over the Red Keep's labyrinthine walls. She had spent a restless night haunted by the voices of the throne room. Even now, she felt poised between pride at how her father had stood firm and dread for what might come next. The realm was in turmoil. The king was dead, the truth about Joffrey's parentage had been thrust into the open, and neither Cersei Lannister nor the lords who supported her were likely to yield without a fight. She slipped out of bed and moved toward the tall window overlooking King's Landing. From her high vantage, she could see a stretch of streets bathed in thin morning light. The city had a hush about it, despite the swirl of wagons and people moving already, like a living thing holding its breath. Somewhere far off, a gull cried out above Blackwater Bay. Dressing swiftly, she braided her auburn hair with steady fingers. Her heart was still drumming a little too hard. Every moment seemed precarious now. Last night, she had overheard her father's hushed conversation with Renly Baratheon in the Tower of the Hand. They had spoken of sending urgent ravens to summon more lords to the capital to confirm or deny Joffrey's lineage in an official council. But Sansa could see the cracks forming in that plan. Many of the realm's lords were far away, and Tywin Lannister was marching with a host. Stannis Baratheon, the rightful heir by law if Joffrey was indeed no true Baratheon, had not yet arrived. And in the city itself, countless swords might be bought by Lannister gold. All the same, her father had forced the question into open daylight, and Joffrey could not simply proclaim himself king without challenge. The queen had lost her chance to quietly sweep Ned aside. But as the tension rose, the chance for open war came closer with every passing hour. She made her way downstairs, stepping into the corridor that led toward her father's solar. 2 Stark guards in mail and cloaks of gray wool stood watch at the doorway. They gave her respectful nods and pulled the door open. Inside, Lord Eddard Stark stood at a table littered with scrolls and maps. He had been meeting with Vayen Poole, Jory Castle, and a soft-spoken herald from Lord Renly's retinue. The air smelled faintly of cold ash from a brazier burned overnight. "Sansa," Ned said gently when he saw her. His eyes were tired, ringed with shadows. He dismissed the herald with a courteous nod. The man bowed and left, leaving the Starks and Jory behind. "Come. We've a moment now." She curtsied to her father, unneeded courtesy in private but a reflex that felt somehow comforting in the midst of so much upheaval. "Has there been any new word?" she asked. Ned sighed. "No word from Dragonstone yet. Ravens were sent, but we've no reply from Lord Stannis. As for the Lannisters, Tywin marches. We can't be sure how soon he'll reach the city, but all reports suggest he's on the move with a formidable army. Cersei has not tried to seize power again outright, but I sense she's simply waiting for a better moment. Our best hope is that the lords loyal to law will gather here soon." Sansa's mind flicked with images of men in gilded armor storming the Red Keep, of Lannister banners unfurled in every courtyard. The city watch, would it stand aside or turn on her father's men? She remembered that in the true histories, power in King's Landing shifted with bribes and cunning as much as with steel. "Father," she said softly, "I could help you learn who among the city's officers might be swayed by Lannister gold. Yesterday, I overheard a rumor that Janos Slynt dines regularly with one of Littlefinger's men. If that's so, he might be up to something. Would you have me listen more closely to see if the Gold Cloak's loyalty is truly wavering?" He studied her with weary affection. "I don't like you roaming these halls unguarded. It is dangerous." "I'll be cautious, father. But knowledge is everything right now." Ned hesitated. Then he nodded. "Very well. Tell Jory if you hear any sign that Slynt or his officers plot against us. The moment anything concrete surfaces, we must act." She gave a resolute nod and stepped nearer. "And what of the Queen? Do we make any overture to her?" His mouth pressed tight. After how she responded yesterday, any attempt at peace would be an invitation for treachery. "No, I'll not go to her. The next move is hers unless we can rally enough of the realm's power to force her hand. We need the Council of Great Lords. If they see proof of Joffrey's parentage, they may demand that the boy be set aside, and that would be the end of it. But we must hold on until more witnesses, more allies, arrive." Sansa could not help her mind drifting to a memory of the throne room, the clang of voices echoing off stone walls, the seething fury in Joffrey's eyes when Ned called him a bastard. She shuddered. "I'll be careful," she promised, then asked quietly, "What of Arya, father? And the others? Have we heard any word?" At that, Ned's face softened. "Arya is safe at the manse where Syrio Farrell has been giving her lessons. She's been told to remain there for now. As for your mother, I don't know. She was last known to be traveling for the Vale, but with the unrest, news is scarce. Robb and Bran and Rickon remain at Winterfell, I pray, safe behind its walls." Sansa nodded, feeling a wave of longing. How simple Winterfell seemed now, how far away. But there was no going back until the question of the Iron Throne was settled. Too many powers were in motion. She left her father to his endless scrolls and duties, stepping back into the corridor with a mixture of determination and dread. She would make her quiet inquiries, do what she could to see which men might be slipping under Lannister influence. That was the role she had chosen, a role more subtle than swords, but one that might save her family. She began in the lower kitchens, well known as a hub of gossip. The cooking staff rarely hid their opinions, and the servants who carried food to the men-at-arms often overheard them talking. She found that the air there was thick with tension. People paused to look at her as she passed, but she adopted the same polite courtesy, smiling softly, offering a word of praise about the delicious bread. She lingered near a cluster of scullions who were kneading dough. If they saw her, they pretended not to, continuing their chatter about rising prices in the markets, about ruffians on the streets. One scullion, a girl a few years older than Sansa, mentioned something about that big gold cloak officer, the one with the fancy ring. "I heard he's meeting some visitors in a back room near the Street of Silk." Sansa cleared her throat softly, stepping closer. "Pardon," she said, adopting a meek tone, "I'm only searching for a tray of honey cakes that was to be sent to the Tower of the Hand. Have you seen it?" The scullion jumped, then flushed. "Oh, my lady," she said, pressing dough with floured hands. She gestured behind her. "That tray's by the ovens. We'll have it ready soon." "Thank you," Sansa replied. She didn't move away, though. She angled her head as if simply curious. "I couldn't help hearing you speak about a gold cloak officer. Are there rumors about him?" The scullion glanced at her companions, uncertain. "Well, maybe so. Some say he's been walking about with coin heavier than his rank, giving orders to certain watchmen behind the back of the official commander. But I don't know details. It's just talk." Another cook, an older woman with lines etched around her mouth, sniffed. "Lady Sansa, best be careful listening to half-lies from servants. The city's tense. People see conspiracies everywhere, especially among officers wanting an extra bit of gold. Janos Slynt's men might be scoundrels, but in times like these, loyalty is sold dear." Sansa nodded, forcing a light smile, but her mind whirled. "Thank you," she said politely. Then she claimed the tray of honey cakes, fresh from the ovens, and, as if that had been her entire purpose, she glided out of the kitchens. Perhaps that rumor might come to nothing, but she would pass it on. She began to sense that the city watch was even more fractured than before. Some men might remain loyal to the crown, others to Ned Stark as protector. Still others might accept bribes from the Queen or from whichever lord promised the best future. It was a cauldron of shifting allegiances, and only timely knowledge might help her father navigate it without violence. She sent the honey cakes along with a servant, then slipped back through the corridors. She had just rounded a corner near the armory when she nearly collided with Peter Baelish. Littlefinger was all in dark velvets, an amused look on his pointed face as he stepped aside to avoid running into her. She took a step back, curtsying quickly. "My lord," she said, feeling the tension coil in her stomach. He gave a mock bow. "Lady Sansa, you are up and about so early. May I ask which direction you hurry in, with such purpose in your eyes?" Her face flushed. "I am merely about my errands, my lord." "Errands for your father, no doubt," Peter said. His sly smile only sharpened. "You are quite the dutiful daughter, from everything I hear. Listen carefully, glean the hush of secrets. So very diligent." A prickle of fear warmed her cheeks. "I only attend to small tasks," she answered lightly. "The castle can be lonely if one stays locked in a room." Littlefinger nodded, stepping aside so she could pass, but he continued speaking in a low purr. "A wise choice. The Red Keep's many corners can reveal wonders and horrors alike, but for those who wish to succeed here, knowledge is always the best coin to carry. Just take care that the coin is not counterfeit." Many tongues wag with half-truths. His eyes flicked to her. "And tongues also wag about you, my lady. Some say you have become your father's little bird of secrets." She suppressed a tremor. "I don't know what they mean by that. Nor do I, truly." He looked almost disappointed that she wasn't rattled. "But if you ever find yourself in need of a friend in the capital, do remember me. I have always had a fondness for those with Tully blood, and Stark blood, of course." With that final hint, he touched his beard and strode off, leaving her feeling uneasy. She suspected Littlefinger could see more than he let on and took pleasure in letting others know it. Would he betray them to the Queen if it served his interests? She feared so. She pressed on until she reached the Tower of the Hand, where she delivered the second-hand rumor to Jory Castle. Jory listened closely, brow furrowed. "A back room near the Street of Silk, you say? That's the brothel district. If Gold Cloak officers are meeting with unsavory persons, it might be Lannister men slipping them coin. Or perhaps someone else is stirring mischief. I'll see if we can investigate quietly." "Be careful," Sansa urged. "There may be watchers. Lord Baelish, for one, has connections to all the brothels. I don't know if he's involved, but his name is always whispered in these sorts of dealings." Jory nodded, gave her a grateful, almost paternal smile, and promised he would. Then she left him to make his plans while she returned to her father's solar to see if he needed any errands run. As she entered, she found him grim-faced, conferring with Lord Renly Baratheon. Renly was pacing, his green doublet unbuttoned at the neck. The tension was clear in the set of his shoulders. "And I say again," Renly was insisting, "Stannis will be the death of all compromise. If you crown him, the realm will splinter further. The man has no gift for friendship and no mercy for those who wronged him. Half the Stormlands despise him, half are bound to him by fear alone. I am the better choice to unify. I'm Robert's brother just as much as he is. Younger, yes, but possessed of some measure of charm." Ned's voice was quiet but unyielding. "Your brother is older, rightful by law. I will not pretend the lines of succession can be shaped by preference." Renly threw up his hands. "Law, we are on the brink of a war that might cost thousands of lives. The Lannisters will never surrender peacefully, and Stannis has no flexibility in him. If we had a more agreeable king, we could find a settlement and avert bloodshed." Ned's jaw tightened. "Do you think Cersei would quietly yield to you, Renly, if you were declared king? She would not. They would fight just as hard against you as they would against Stannis. No matter who sits the throne, if it isn't Joffrey, the Lannisters will call it usurpation." Renly paused, frustration etched on his features. "Then what is our plan? Will we simply wait until Tywin is at the gates and Stannis at sea and watch the city become a battleground?" Ned massaged his temples. "I have called for a great council of the lords presently in or near King's Landing to convene within 2 days. Once they see the evidence, Jon Arryn's notes, the genealogies, and the physical proof of Joffrey's mismatched traits, they may declare him disqualified. If the city's lords collectively denounce Joffrey, perhaps Cersei and her supporters will lose heart. Perhaps they'll see reason, or at least realize the cost of civil war is too high to justify. Then Stannis would be recognized king, or they might insist on investigating further. But the law is clear: Robert's elder brother inherits if his children are illegitimate." Renly's mouth flattened in a line. "You are as stubborn as the first King Aegon was said to be." So be it. I'll remain at your side for now. But do not be surprised if the realm tears itself apart. Cersei is not known for meekness. Ned only nodded. Then he noticed Sansa at the threshold. With a brief, quiet signal, he sent Renly on his way. The younger Baratheon left in a swirl of expensive cloak, frustration radiating from him. Once he was gone, Ned beckoned her closer. Sansa, he asked gently, did you hear much? She came forward, feeling the tension thrumming in the air. Only bits, father. Lord Renly fears civil war if Stannis is proclaimed king. Ned frowned. He is not wrong to fear it. But the other option is to allow the Lannisters to seat a false king on the Iron Throne. That would tear the kingdom apart in its own way. The seeds of war were sown the moment Robert died, or perhaps even before. All we can do is try to shepherd the realm toward the lawful outcome with minimal bloodshed. Sansa reached for his hand and clasped it. I stand with you. Whatever comes. He gently squeezed her fingers. I know, sweet girl. Now go and see what else you might learn. I have letters to write. The Great Council is scheduled for 2 days hence, and every hour until then is precious. She left him to it. That afternoon, the Red Keep bustled with barely contained anticipation. Sansa took note of how the corridors seemed to bristle with guards in Lannister livery. More than once, she found them blocking certain passages, quietly instructing visitors to take alternate routes. This unsettled her. It suggested that the Lannisters were fortifying their positions, though no open declaration had been made. She overheard one group of knights telling a serving maid that the queen would ensure the safety of the royal family first, no matter what the traitors in the city said. As she walked past, she forced herself not to react to the word traitors. The Lannisters would label Ned Stark a traitor as soon as they found the nerve and advantage to do so. She hurried away before the knights could address her. By the time she reached the wing of the White Sword Tower where the Kingsguard had their quarters, she realized she needed to breathe more slowly, calm her racing heart. None of this had been foreseen in the naive daydreams she used to entertain in Winterfell. She could almost see Arya mocking her for once wanting to be a perfect lady in King's Landing. But those illusions had served their purpose. She could still wrap herself in courtesy when needed, a cloak to hide her fear. A small hush drew her attention. Standing near the tower's door, Ser Barristan Selmy was in quiet discussion with another of the Kingsguard, Ser Aerys O'Hart. She paused at a distance, half hidden by a pillar, uncertain if she should approach. But Ser Barristan seemed to notice her anyway. He turned, beckoning her closer with a hand. Swallowing, she stepped forward and curtsied. Ser Barristan, she greeted him quietly. Ser Aerys. Ser Aerys gave her a polite nod, though it was clear that tension etched the lines of his face. Barristan was calmer, if grave. My lady, Barristan said, it is not often we see you in this part of the keep. Are you lost? She shook her head. I was only walking. I saw you both and, well, I wondered if the Kingsguard might be troubled by all that's happening. Ser Aerys' jaw tightened. Troubled? He glanced at Barristan. We serve the king. Prince, I mean King Joffrey. Barristan did not correct him verbally, but Sansa saw the flicker of conflict in his gaze. Yes, we serve the crown. But some matters are not so easily resolved. It weighs on us. The old knight studied her, then softened his tone. Have a care, Lady Sansa. These halls are thick with watchers. She nodded. I know. But I only wish to say that if the city erupts in violence, many innocents will suffer. My father does not wish for war. He only wants to uphold King Robert's dying wishes. Aerys shifted his feet. I cannot speak to that, my lady. Ser Barristan, I'll leave you to your counsel. With a curt bow, he turned away. It was plain he felt caught between conflicting loyalties. Ser Barristan watched him go, then murmured, You are a brave girl to speak so openly. Some might suspect you of trying to turn the Kingsguard from Joffrey. His voice was not scolding, only cautious. Sansa lowered her eyes. I do not know what else to do. Ser Barristan, if the council meets and finds Joffrey not Robert's son, will you support the realm's decision? Barristan's brow furrowed. If the assembled lords come to a lawful conclusion, it is the Kingsguard's duty to protect the true line. Yet duty is rarely so simple. He paused. I watched your father speak truth in the throne room. He was calm, unwavering. I have come to respect that, though it sets me at odds with some of my sworn brethren. He exhaled. Should the realm decide in favor of Stannis, I must follow that lawful command. But I fear the queen, and I fear the gold cloaks might not let the matter rest so peaceably. We must all be prepared for the moment steel is drawn. A cold shiver rippled down Sansa's spine. She could not imagine how it would look if the Kingsguard turned on each other, if some recognized Stannis and others stayed loyal to Joffrey. I pray it never comes to that. As do I. He dipped his head. "Farewell, my lady. Please go carefully. King's Landing is always treacherous, but more so now than ever." She thanked him and slipped away, that chill still lodged inside her. The next day passed in a fog of uncertainty. No single event erupted, but the sense of a gathering storm never left her. Whenever she passed Lannister men, she saw the tension in their eyes, some flicker of readiness to fight if called upon. News trickled in that Tywin Lannister had reached Harrenhal with part of his host, a vantage that put him uncomfortably close. The Queen and Prince Joffrey took most of their meals in private, behind guarded doors. Lord Renly's knights patrolled the keep in small numbers, though not enough to fully match the gold cloaks if violence began. And Ned Stark was locked in meeting after meeting, corresponding with lords and stewards, trying to hold everything together until the planned council could convene. At last, the appointed day came. Morning dawned bright and hot, the sun beating mercilessly upon the city's rooftops. Sansa joined her father in the Tower of the Hand early, sharing a simple meal. She could sense his tension by the way he barely touched his food. This was the day the great lords in the capital and any newly arrived in the outskirts would gather to weigh the claims. They made their way together to the throne room. The hall was being prepared, tall braziers lit, tapestries parted, the huge doors thrown open to admit the watchers and participants. The Iron Throne loomed on its dais, dark metal swallowing the sunlight that filtered down from the windows high above. Sansa stood with her father near the front. Renly arrived wearing green silks, a small golden crown-shaped ornament set in his thick black hair. Barristan was there in his white cloak, face solemn. A handful of other lords clustered in tense groups. Sansa recognized some. Lord Mace Tyrell of Highgarden, newly arrived in the city just the day prior, with a retinue of knights. There was also the tall and gaunt Lord Hoster Tully from Riverrun, her mother's father, though clearly ailing, leaning on a cane. Several bannermen of the Crownlands were present. Rosby, Stoworth, Hayford. She spotted more knights and minor lords on the edges, their expressions ranging from curious to fearful. The Queen and Prince Joffrey entered last, accompanied by Cersei's cousin Lancel and a retinue of Lannister guards. Joffrey wore a small golden circlet on his head, his face a mask of anger. He took a seat on the Iron Throne with obvious discomfort. Sansa imagined the metal pricking at him, and Cersei stood at his right. The hush in the hall was profound. Ned Stark stepped forward. He wore a cloak of grey wool pinned by the direwolf sigil, and he carried a leather-bound sheaf of papers and genealogies. He turned to face the assembled lords. "My lords," he said, voice carrying in the hush, "we come here by order of the late King Robert Baratheon, who named me protector of the realm until his heir comes of age. But that heir must be the late king's true-born child. I have presented evidence that Joffrey Baratheon is in fact not Robert's son, and thus ineligible to inherit. The rightful heir, by all the laws of the realm, is Lord Stannis Baratheon. Today we ask the great lords here gathered to examine this evidence." Murmurs swept the audience. Some demanded to see the proof at once, others demanded that Joffrey be recognized, citing Robert's public acknowledgement of the boy for years. Joffrey glared at Ned, knuckles white on the Iron Throne's arms. Cersei raised a hand. "Lords of the Seven Kingdoms," she said, her voice full of regal scorn, "this is an insult. My son has been recognized as the king's issue since his birth. Are we to undo years of tradition simply because Lord Stark claims otherwise? Are we to let him mock the memory of Robert Baratheon?" She turned her gaze pointedly toward the Tyrells, the Tullis, and the Crownlands lords. "Do not be fooled by an upstart who chases scraps of rumors left by a dead man, Jon Arryn. The realm cannot be governed by rumors. My father, Lord Tywin, stands ready to defend the rightful king's claim if any in the realm are foolish enough to threaten it." Another wave of murmuring swept the hall. Lord Mace Tyrell cleared his throat, puffing out his chest. "My queen, we do not wish to sow confusion. But you must understand that a written proof from Jon Arryn, combined with the distinct coloring of House Baratheon, raises many questions." He cast a meaningful glance at Joffrey's golden locks. Joffrey's glare shifted to Tyrell. "I am the king. The colors of my hair do not matter. My father, Robert, named me heir. Let us end this farce." Lord Hoster Tully, leaning heavily on his cane, spoke in a rasp. "We cannot so easily dismiss the claim. My own nephew, a Lord Eddard's wife's sister, Lisa Tully, was wife to Jon Arryn, who discovered these secrets before his death. If what they say is true, we must weigh it carefully." Joffrey's gaze flickered with open contempt. Cersei's face hardened. But Ned spoke again, raising his voice. "My lords, see the genealogies compiled by the late hand, Jon Arryn. Note the consistent coloring of Baratheon heirs through centuries. Note that every child born of a Baratheon father has shown black hair, brown hair, never gold. We have also statements from certain midwives and from individuals close to the Queen that her relations with her brother Jaime Lannister were more than sibling affection. Gasps rippled at such blunt words, but Ned pressed on. We do not speak these charges lightly. The late hand died seeking these truths. King Robert's last written command named me protector until his true heir is determined. He motioned for Ser Barristan, who took a step forward with grave dignity. Barristan cleared his throat. I, Ser Barristan Selmy of the King's Guard, can attest to Lord Aaron's personal inquiries. He confronted me about the lineage of Robert's bastards, comparing their features to those of his legitimate children. In all things, Robert's get took after him in coloring, save for these 3 children by the Queen. He looked at Joffrey, sorrow and resolve mingling on his weathered face. It troubles me to say it, but I cannot dismiss the possibility that these children are not of Robert's line. Joffrey let out a bark of fury. Ser Barristan, you dare. Cersei's hand snapped up in warning, though, as if to restrain her son from launching into a more dangerous outburst. Tension hung thick in the air. Some lords were nodding at Barristan's words, some frowning in doubt or anger. The gold cloaks by the dais shifted uncertainly, eyes darting between Joffrey and Ned. A voice rose from the crowd, Peter Baelish stepping forward in a swirl of fine cloth. My lords, my ladies, the question stands. I propose that we invite more thorough scrutiny before we crown or denounce any claimant. Let a small council weigh the documents, question the relevant persons, and render a verdict. We need not tear the realm apart in a day. Ned studied Littlefinger, uncertain of his angle. But many lords seemed relieved by the idea of a slower approach. The Queen gave a gracious nod as if to adopt that stance. Yes, she said, voice tight but measured, we must not let slander and forged papers tear down the monarchy. If Lord Stark is so certain of his claims, we shall have them tested by a proper hearing. And all the while, my son shall continue to govern as the rightful king. Ned braced. He cannot govern as king if he is under suspicion. King Robert's command named me protector in exactly such a circumstance, so that no usurper might rule unchallenged. I will assume the powers of the regency until the matter is settled. The hall erupted. Cersei was shouting that Ned had no right, Joffrey demanding the traitor's head, other lords clamoring for calm. Swords rasped free in half a dozen places, gold cloaks stepping forward. It seemed a single spark might ignite a riot. But then a trumpet blast resounded from the corridor, startling everyone. A breathless steward burst into the hall, voice echoing. Lord Stannis Baratheon has arrived at the city gates with a company of men. He demands entry into the Red Keep in the name of King Robert and the rightful line of House Baratheon. The uproar redoubled. Sansa felt her pulse race. This was it, Stannis had come. Cersei's face twisted in shock and fury. Joffrey half rose from the throne, shouting that the gates must be closed. Lords milled in confusion. Ned Stark saw an opportunity. Lifting his voice, he addressed the crowd. Stannis is Robert's elder brother. The gates must be opened. If the realm is to see a lawful resolution, we cannot bar the rightful claimant from presenting his case. Cersei turned on him. You want to let him march his soldiers in here to put you on the throne in his place? No. I forbid it. She whirled to the gold cloaks. Close the gates. Bar Stannis. This is the order of your queen. But the gold cloaks hesitated, shifting uncertainly. Some looked to their captain, some to Ser Barristan. Others looked to Ned, the recognized protector. The city teetered on the verge of chaos. Then Renly Baratheon, who had been silent through the last exchange, stepped forth. He called out, if we do not open the gates, we risk bloodshed at the walls. Stannis does not come alone. The small folk will suffer if we force him to besiege the city. Is that what Joffrey wants, to see King's Landing burn? Better to let Stannis come, and we settle this question in front of all. Joffrey sputtered. Why are you siding with that humorless fool? I'm the king. But a wave of uneasy agreement spread among the lords. The city watch, confronted with contradictory orders, began to side with the more measured approach. One by one, they lowered their weapons. With the queen's screaming protests echoing behind, a large portion of them turned to carry out the directive to open the gates, an order that ultimately came from Ned as protector, endorsed by Renly, and not wholly opposed by the fractious group of uncertain lords. Faced with the overwhelming will of the hall, even the Lannister guards realized they could not start a pitched battle here without the certain risk of losing or sowing unstoppable chaos. Cersei's face was white with rage as she watched the gold cloaks depart to do Ned's bidding. Joffrey sank back on the throne, fists clenched in impotence. Then, with a harsh glare, The queen turned and swept out of the throne room, Lannister guards falling in around her and the prince. Shouts of confusion and fear rippled, but no one raised a hand to stop them. The realm was in flux, and the next step loomed. The arrival of Stannis himself. Sansa, standing off to the side of her father, felt her heart thundering so violently that she wondered if others could hear it. She had not foreseen such a dramatic moment. The council uproar, the news of Stannis at the gates. She glanced at Ned's face. He looked grim, determined, but not without hope. The protective ring of Stark men around them was tense and ready. Renly approached them in a swirl of green cloak. "Well done," he murmured to Ned, though his tone was fraught. "At least the City Watch is not entirely in the Lannisters' pocket. But you realize if Stannis marches in, he'll not show lenience to them or to Joffrey." Ned inclined his head. "Nor should he if they resist him. Joffrey is not the rightful heir. Stannis is. What comes next is uncertain. But better that we handle it with fewer swords drawn in the city streets." Renly's face tightened. "We shall see. I'll gather my men in the courtyard to greet my brother." Then he was gone, striding away purposefully. Ned turned to Sansa. "Stay near me," he said softly. "We must see this through. If Cersei tries something desperate, we'll need every ally we can call upon." Sansa nodded, swallowing her fear. The next hours passed in a blur. Word spread through the Red Keep like wildfire. Stannis was allowed entrance, accompanied by a column of mounted knights, about 200 strong. They rode in under the watchful eyes of the gold cloaks and the uncertain populace crowding the narrow streets. Sansa did not see the arrival personally, but from an upper window of the keep she caught glimpses of the knights' banners. The crowned stag of Baratheon, black on gold, but with a flaming red heart as well. A sigil that suggested Stannis's new devotion to a foreign red priestess if rumors were true. Many in the capital whispered fearfully about that. The swirl of color set a hush over the onlookers. In truth, no one quite knew what to expect from the stern, reclusive brother of the late king. Sansa hurried down to the throne room again with her father, flanked by a handful of Stark guards. A hush had settled in the echoing space, the lords drifting back in to witness what was sure to be another confrontation. The dais loomed vacant now. Joffrey had retreated to the queen's quarters, or so the rumor said. No one sat the Iron Throne. Ser Barristan and 2 other Kingsguard knights were posted near the dais, uncertain of how to greet Stannis. Renly and his men stood off to one side. Littlefinger lingered among a group of lesser lords, his expression unreadable. Varys hovered near a pillar, wringing his hands. Then Stannis Baratheon strode into the hall. He wore a breastplate showing the crowned stag over a red heart and a heavy cloak. His face was gaunt and harsh, a mouth seemingly incapable of smiling. A retinue of knights followed, including the imposing figure of Ser Davos Seaworth, rumored once to have been a smuggler but now the most trusted of Stannis's men. Murmurs filled the throne room. This man did not swagger as Robert once had, but carried himself with a flinty purpose, eyes scanning the space with curt appraisal. Ned stepped forward. "Lord Stannis," he began respectfully, "you have come to King's Landing at a time of grave peril for the realm." Stannis inclined his head stiffly. "I am King Stannis, Lord of the 7 Kingdoms by rights, if the boy Joffrey is indeed a bastard of incest." His voice rang in the silence. "I have heard your claims, Eddard Stark. I trust you did not summon me here only to find you've turned cloak to the Lannisters." Ned shook his head. "I have summoned you because Robert left no trueborn heirs and you are his lawful successor. I have told the realm of Joffrey's parentage." Stannis's narrow eyes flicked about the hall. "Yet I see no crown on your head, no brand of traitor upon you. Has the realm accepted your word so easily?" Renly, stepping forward, interjected, "No, brother, not easily. The Queen and Boy King still claim the throne. But many lords are unsure. A hearing was convened this morning, and your timely arrival may prove decisive." Stannis turned a level gaze upon Renly. "You presume to greet me warmly after urging lords to crown you in my place? Rumors abound of your ambition, little brother." His tone was ice. Renly colored but said nothing more. Stannis's attention swung back to Ned. "And where is Joffrey?" Ned exhaled. "He has withdrawn to his mother's chambers. No doubt they plot a course of action. The Lannisters might attempt to rally an attack if they see an opportunity." Stannis gave a curt nod. "Then we must not give them one. I have men enough to hold the Red Keep if the City Watch stands with me." "What is their stance?" Ned gestured around. They are uncertain but leaning away from Lannister cause, so long as no sudden slaughter is threatened. They want law, not mayhem. Stannis pursed his lips. Law. Indeed, law is what guides me. Very well. Let us proceed with formalities. If the great lords in this hall would judge the evidence of my nephew's bastardy, if indeed you can call him that, let them judge now. A hush fell as the lords, many bristling with tension, stepped forward to present themselves to Stannis. One by one, they voiced their stance or their uncertainties. Ned Stark produced the genealogies again, recited the glaring discrepancies, cited Jon Arryn's investigations. Renly gave testimony about Robert's remarks in private, that the children resembled none of his line. Ser Barristan quietly confirmed his own suspicions. All the while, Stannis stood in silence, absorbing each detail. The hush deepened when Ser Davos stepped forward, speaking of a conversation with Robert in his final days, in which the king lamented that Joffrey was a harsh boy, so unlike me, fueling Davos's belief that Robert had suspected something amiss. The final blow came when a timid steward from the royal apartments delivered a statement from Grand Maester Pycelle, an old man who had apparently been detained by the queen in his quarters but managed to slip out a sealed note claiming he had once tested the children's blood for certain humors at Lord Arryn's behest, an unorthodox method, and found results that defied the expected paternal markers. It was all very cryptic, but it lent further weight to the accusations. When the chorus of voices subsided, Stannis inhaled, as if bracing himself for the final step. His gaze swept the hall. Where is the queen? If she would refute these charges, let her do so. I will hear her words, if only to honor the memory of my brother. No answer came. Cersei did not appear, nor did Joffrey. A handful of Lannister guards had stationed themselves near the hall's entrance, but they were severely outnumbered by the combined presence of Stannis's knights and the watchmen who had begun filtering in. The tension grew. Lord Mace Tyrell cleared his throat and proclaimed, "It seems the queen will not speak. In that absence, I find the evidence compelling. House Tyrell has always supported the rightful king. We stand with Stannis." Murmurs of agreement or grudging acceptance rolled through the throng. Hoster Tully, though ailing, nodded. Yes, the lines of succession must stand. I owe no fealty to Lannister bastards. I lend my voice to Stannis. One after another, the Crownland lords nodded, if only to avoid being on the losing side. Even Peter Baelish, wearing a half-smile, said something to the effect of the realm is best served by its true king, though he made no grand flourish of loyalty. Stannis turned to Ned. It seems the lords accept me as Robert's successor. If so, Eddard Stark, you were named protector to hold the realm until I arrived. I stand ready to relieve you of that office. Ned gave a formal bow, as Robert intended. The crown is yours if the realm is satisfied. I will serve you as needed. Stannis lifted his chin. A day ago, your men and the queen's men were near to drawing swords in this hall. We have a chance to avert more bloodshed, but only if Joffrey and Cersei yield. Will they yield willingly? The unspoken alternative was clear. If they did not yield, Stannis would forcibly remove them. Renly spoke before Ned could answer. Cersei yield? She'll burn half the city if she thinks she can escape losing power. I wouldn't put it past her to attempt something drastic. Stannis's mouth hardened. Then we must secure them at once. If they are holed up in the royal apartments, let us go to them. The city watch shall accompany. Any resistance will be met by the king's law. He pivoted, barking an order to his knights. Surround the royal wing. The Lannisters are not to escape. A stir of alarm whipped through the hall, but no one dared contradict him. The lords parted as he strode toward the doors, knights forming around him in a wedge. Ned, after a swift look at Sansa, followed in the wake, and she, not wanting to be left behind, moved quickly to keep up. Her heart pounded as she realized how close they were to open violence again. But if Stannis seized the queen's apartments quickly, perhaps a full-scale battle could be avoided. The corridors filled with the sound of marching boots. Stannis's forces, though only 200 or so, were well-armed and determined. The gold cloaks along the way seemed uncertain, but allowed them passage, some calling out deference to King Stannis. Sansa saw the flicker of fear in their eyes. Most had never known or served Stannis, but if they saw the city's lords rallying to him, they had little choice but to comply. They reached the royal apartments to find Lannister guards arrayed in front. Swords were drawn at once. Tension sizzle. Ed, a standoff in the corridor. The Lannister captain bellowed, "In the name of the Queen, stand back. Any who approach shall die." Stannis's men fanned out and the corridor pressed with the clang of steel. Ned Stark stepped forward, voice urgent. "Stand aside. The realm has recognized Stannis Baratheon as king. Do not throw your lives away for a hopeless cause." The Lannister guards hesitated. Then a sharp voice sounded from behind them, Cersei herself, stepping into view at the threshold, face pale with fury. Joffrey stood behind her, pale and scowling. "You dare come here, Stannis? My son is the king. I will not submit." Stannis eyed her coldly from across the line of swords. "The realm begs to differ, my lady. Surrender. No blood need be spilled if you yield. You will be treated with courtesy befitting your station, but you cannot be allowed to pretend your boy sits the throne." Joffrey let out a stream of vitriol. "Bastard uncle. I'll have your head for this. The throne is mine. Open your eyes, boy," Stannis said bluntly. "The city stands with me. The lords stand with me. You have no claim." Cersei's face contorted as though she might shriek. Instead, she spun on her men. "Kill them," she hissed. "Kill them all. The throne is ours, we are the rightful—" She never finished the command. The corridor exploded in violence. The Lannister guards, perhaps out of blind loyalty or desperation, clashed swords with Stannis's knights. Screams rang out, steel clashed, men grunted and cried. Ned Stark's men joined the fray. Sansa let out a little cry and backed away, pressing herself against a wall to avoid the swirl of chaos. She saw one of the Lannister guards break ranks and attempt to strike at Ned, only to be cut down by Jory Castle's sword. The corridor's cramped quarters magnified every clash of metal, every shout. Cersei tried to retreat back inside, but Stannis's men surged forward. A battered, bloody knight, Ser Davos, from the look of him, pushed through the press and seized the threshold, blade in hand. Joffrey swung wildly at him with a dagger, but Davos knocked the boy's arm aside, showing surprising gentleness in not simply cutting him down. Another wave of knights poured in behind him, overwhelming the last of the Lannister guard. Sansa heard a shriek that might have been one of Cersei's ladies-in-waiting. The hallway reeked of blood and fear. Panting, Ned Stark emerged from the tangle, sword in hand, scanning for his daughter. His eyes found Sansa pressed against the wall. He made his way to her, placed a protective arm around her shoulders. "Stay behind me," he said urgently, voice taut. They advanced together, stepping over sprawled bodies. Some were wounded, groaning. Others were still. The carnage was mercifully brief but undeniably real. Within moments, Stannis and his men had forced entry into the Queen's receiving chamber. Cersei stood at bay, a small dagger in hand, Joffrey behind her, as if she would kill anyone who approached. Several ladies huddled at the corners of the room, weeping. A single Lannister guard still lived, on his knees with a bleeding shoulder, while half a dozen of Stannis's knights surrounded them, swords leveled. Ned halted near the doorway. Stannis stepped forward, face like iron, chest heaving. "It is over," he growled at Cersei. "Submit and you will not be harmed. Resist further, and the law is clear, you have conspired to hide the truth of your children's birth, to seize the throne by deceit." She looked like a lioness cornered, her green eyes blazing. "You'll regret this, Stannis. My father will repay you in kind." "I do not fear your father," Stannis said in a flat voice. "If he marches on King's Landing, we will meet him as traitors to the crown. Now, put down the dagger." For one long heartbeat, Sansa thought Cersei would lunge at him or slash her own throat in defiance. But then Joffrey cried out, voice shrill, "Mother, do something," and she let out a bitter laugh, dropping the dagger with a clang to the floor. She sank to her knees, Joffrey clinging to her side. The boy's face twisted with hatred and helpless rage. He spat curses at Stannis, at Ned, at all of them, but no one moved to strike him down. The threat was ended. Stannis turned to his knights and said, "Take them into custody. They will be held in comfortable quarters but confined, and their guards replaced by men loyal to the king, loyal to me. Let no harm come to them, but let none of them slip away either." His men nodded, carefully escorting Cersei and Joffrey out as the boy continued his tirade, sobbing and screaming by turns. In the corridor, wounded men were being carried away. Sansa stood frozen, tears pricking her eyes at the sight of blood on the floor. Ned placed a hand on her shoulder, voice gruff with concern. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, numb. "No, father. Just frightened." He exhaled, relieved she was not injured. "War spares no one," he said softly, "but I would have spared you this if I could." She swallowed. "I know. I'm all right." A shaky sigh escaped her. Is it done?" Stannis emerged from the chamber, expression grim. "For now," he said. "The Queen and the boy are taken. The Lannister forces within the keep are leaderless, many have already laid down arms or retreated. The city is ours. A solemn hush lingered. Ned bowed his head. Then I will make an announcement to the people to let them know the rightful king holds the Red Keep and that the transition is done. We must prevent chaos in the streets. And we must see that Tywin Lannister cannot dispute this by force. Stannis nodded. Yes. We will settle that matter soon enough. First, the city must be secured. Ser Davos, organize our men. Ensure the gold cloaks maintain order. Lord Stark, I will rely on you to keep the peace among the Crownland lords and to see that no new conflagration starts. We do not want pillaging or vengeful men turning this into a slaughter of Lannisters or any who once served them. Renly approached, offering a stiff bow to Stannis. So it is done. The city belongs to you, brother. The realm awaits your firm hand. Stannis's eyes flicked to him, still holding some measure of resentment or suspicion. We will speak of your earlier ambitions later, Renly. For now, we must act in unity. The Lannisters remain a threat. I have no intention of sitting idle while Tywin or Jaime muster armies. If it comes to battle, so be it. Ned placed a hand lightly on Renly's shoulder. We have a chance to unify the kingdom under a lawful king. That is more than we could have hoped for a day ago. Renly's lips thinned. Indeed. I only pray we do not lose half the realm in the process. Through it all, Sansa remained beside her father, a swirl of relief and terror in her heart. The Queen and Joffrey were prisoners, the immediate danger to Ned's life had passed, and Stannis Baratheon was taking the throne. No songs she had ever learned spoke of such a scenario, but she had helped shape it by her watchful eyes, by her warnings, by standing with her father. If not for her vigilance, perhaps Ned would have been undone weeks ago as Cersei had first intended. It took days for the city to settle. In that span, Stannis convened the lords again in the throne room, this time sitting on the Iron Throne himself, a courtesy crown upon his head. Though few would call Stannis beloved, he was acknowledged widely now, for the evidence of Joffrey's bastardy was plain. Some lords grumbled that the Queen might have forged a better public image for the boy if she had concealed matters more cunningly, but in truth, her attempt at force had sealed her downfall. Cersei and Joffrey remained under guard in secure quarters. Stannis declared that a formal trial would be held to determine if they had conspired to murder Jon Arryn, to murder King Robert, or to murder any who might have threatened their secret. The knowledge of how Robert died, was it truly a bore, or had wine been tampered with, hung over the city like a shadow. Some suspected Lannister trickery, others believed Robert's drunkenness alone had sealed his fate. Either way, the realm was hungry for justice. Sansa continued to move about quietly, noting that certain Lannister men had slipped away rather than submit. There were whispers that Jaime Lannister still commanded a separate force in the field and that Tywin was massing an army near Harrenhal. None doubted that war might come yet. But at least Ned Stark was safe from immediate betrayal. Indeed, Stannis recognized Ned's crucial role in revealing Joffrey's secret and reaffirmed him as a key advisor, second only to the king. It was a position Ned never sought but accepted out of duty. When Sansa confessed her worries about Tywin's approach, Ned placed a hand on her shoulder. Do not let fear consume you, Sansa. We will prepare. Stannis is harsh, but he will not be outmaneuvered easily. If Tywin means to lay siege, he'll find the city united under a king recognized by the law, not some usurper or child puppet. We can call on the Riverlands, the Stormlands, the North, House Tyrell as well. House Martell may remain aloof for now, but that is uncertain. If the Lannisters choose open war, so be it. She felt the old dread at the thought of armies clashing, but took solace in her father's calm. At least he was alive, not imprisoned, not condemned. A better outcome than she had once feared. Within a fortnight, the realm had begun to realign, slowly if uneasily, around King Stannis. Ravens were sent out proclaiming him the rightful successor, demanding fealty from all corners. Sansa heard that some lords in the west, near Casterly Rock, refused to submit. Tywin Lannister's forces might indeed be on the march soon. But King's Landing was thick with soldiers loyal to Stannis and fortified by the city watch. The common folk, though uncertain, were calmer now that daily life continued without further bloodshed inside the walls. Trade resumed. Street criers declared a new king had come to them, stern but just. Meanwhile, the Queen and Joffrey were confined. Rumors flew that Cersei tried to bribe her jailers, tried to smuggle messages to Tywin, or threatened vile punishments upon the entire city. None of her attempts bore fruit, for Stannis had placed her under strict watch. Joffrey was even more volatile, lashing out, refusing to eat some days, or cursing the usurpers. But no one took his tantrums seriously now. The bastard truth had broken his presumed majesty. Sansa found herself wrestling with conflicted feelings. Though she had no love for Joffrey after his cruelty, she still remembered how once, in her childlike illusions, she'd wanted to be his queen. Seeing him now, caged and bitter, a boy stripped of a throne he had never rightfully held, left a faint hollowness in her. The songs never spoke of a dethroned prince. They never spoke of a father's life saved by cunning overheard scraps of rumor. But she told herself it had to be so. The realm was better off. And her father lived, surely that was what mattered most. In the quiet weeks that followed, Sansa spent her days helping Ned with small tasks. She recorded the petitions of lesser lords who came to bow to King Stannis. She sat with her father when he held audiences in the Tower of the Hand, trying to show a gracious face to worried petitioners. She even visited the Sept regularly to pray for peace, though part of her suspected the gods had little interest in the endless mortal power struggles. One day, as she was leaving the Sept, she heard voices echoing in a side corridor. Lord Renly and Lord Baelish in quiet but heated conversation. She paused, half hidden by a marble column, as their words drifted. Renly said, "Do not think I've forgotten your part in my brother's downfall, Peter. If you had thrown your full weight behind Ned Stark earlier, we might have avoided half the bloodshed." Littlefinger's tone was silky. "Bloodshed was minimal, my lord. And I had my reasons, I assure you. Now that we have King Stannis, you may find that his rule is not as pliable as you would like. Indeed, you might come to wish a different arrangement." Renly's voice hardened. "Enough. I am loyal to my brother for the sake of the realm's peace. I will not scheme with you. Good day." Baelish gave a soft laugh that did not sound amused at all. "As you wish. But do remember, if you find King Stannis's brand of leadership unpalatable, there are always alternatives." Sansa heard footsteps, realized they were coming her way, and swiftly moved off, not wishing to be discovered eavesdropping. But the conversation echoed in her mind. Even with Stannis on the throne, Littlefinger was sowing seeds of possible plots. The game never truly ended in King's Landing. She silently resolved to tell her father. Let him know that Baelish was already sniffing out new angles. When she did so, Ned's face tightened. "Littlefinger is as slippery as an eel," he said. "We must watch him closely. But if Stannis grows too severe, some lords might indeed conspire to replace him with a more likable candidate. The realm's memory of Robert might lead them to Renly, or even to Myrcella or Tommen if they, too, are proven illegitimate. The line between legitimate and bastard is unyielding in the eyes of law, but that has never stopped the cunning from forging alliances on false premises." Sansa shivered at how precarious it all seemed. "Then we must ensure Stannis rules with some measure of grace. Else the realm might be plunged into conflict again." Ned gave her a gentle smile. "You speak like a wise counselor, my daughter. Indeed, if Stannis would heed your words, we might preserve the peace. Though he is not known for listening to counsel from those he deems less steadfast than himself." Despite everything, Sansa felt a flicker of pride that her father respected her insights. She had come a long way from the dreamy girl who only wanted lemon cakes and a gallant prince. She had found a way to be useful, not with a sword, but with her wits, her ears, and her growing sense of the fragile lines that held the realm together. In the weeks that followed, Cersei Lannister was brought to trial before a tribunal of great lords appointed by Stannis. Joffrey, Myrcella, and Tommen were also examined. The children were found illegitimate, though only Joffrey and Cersei faced serious charges of treason. Myrcella and Tommen, being young, were sent away into custody of a neutral house, perhaps the Reach or some other arrangement, where they would be fostered, so they might one day live untainted by the crimes of their mother. Joffrey, older and deemed complicit in certain violent acts, including the butcher's boy incident and the near-slaying of Arya's friend, was confined indefinitely. Cersei raged, hurling slander and condemnation, threatening Tywin's vengeance. Stannis, unmoved, pronounced her guilty and ordered she remain imprisoned until further notice. If Tywin refused to submit, there would be war. Ned Stark remained at Stannis' side as Hand of the King, a role he had once been reluctant to accept under Robert, but now he bore out of necessity. Stannis' style of governance was strict. He demanded immediate fealty from the recalcitrant lords. Soon, letters arrived from Tywin Lannister, full of protest and scorn. War seemed likely, but the city's walls stood strong and Stannis was not about to cede any advantage. One evening, Sansa found herself at her father's side in a smaller audience chamber where Stannis was receiving a trio of knights returned from an expedition north of the city. The knights spoke of robber knights and banditry near the border of the Riverlands, likely Lannister sympathizers. Stannis promised stern retribution. After they departed, Ned rubbed his temples and turned to Stannis. "Your Grace, if we might show some measure of leniency to lesser lords who bend the knee, we might avert unnecessary bloodshed. Consider sending them safe conduct offers. Offer them a place at your table if they yield." Stannis frowned, thick eyebrows drawing together. "Why should I coddle traitors? To unify the realm. To prevent them from rallying behind Tywin. Let them know you are not a tyrant." "Some will come over willingly," Ned said calmly. Stannis' lips pressed thin. "A king must be just, not soft. But I will consider it." Sansa, standing in respectful silence, admired the careful tact her father showed. This was the delicate work of preserving peace that no sword alone could accomplish. She only hoped it would prove enough. After the audience ended, Stannis dismissed them and Ned escorted Sansa back toward their chambers. They were halfway through a torchlit corridor when they passed a window overlooking the city. The sky was streaked with purple and gold from the setting sun. Sansa paused to peer down. King's Landing looked more or less as it ever had, teeming with lights, noise, life. Perhaps she imagined that it felt slightly calmer now, no longer on the brink of instant riot, but it still bristled with tension over the threat of outside armies. "Father," she said softly, "do you ever regret accepting Robert's summons to come here?" Ned stood beside her, gazing out as well. He was silent for a moment, his gray eyes distant with memory. "I did, once," he said at last. "I thought I'd lost everything to these intrigues, that the realm's corruption would consume us. But with Robert's death, we had no choice but to stand for truth. If we had run, I fear House Stark would have been named traitors or hunted. The North might have burned. As it is, we have a chance, albeit a slim one, to rebuild some measure of justice in the realm." She nodded. "I'm glad you're alive," she whispered, voice catching slightly. "I'm glad I could help." He placed a warm hand on her shoulder. "You did far more than help, Sansa. Without your warnings, your watchful eyes, I might have stumbled into Cersei's trap long ago. The outcome might have been catastrophic." She leaned her head briefly against his shoulder, feeling the weight of all they'd survived. "Thank you, Father." He gently turned her to face him, a rare softness in his eyes. "You have become something quite remarkable here, no longer the girl who only dreamed of pretty nights and songs. I wish you had not been forced to see these ugly truths, but I am proud of you nonetheless. The North will be proud, too, if ever we return home." She swallowed. The thought of Winterfell made her chest ache with longing. "Will we go back?" When the realm is stable. If King Stannis requires me, I'll serve, but I hope for the day I can relinquish the burden." He glanced out into the gathering dusk. "War may come with the Lannisters, but for now, at least, we have the city. We have the throne. And we have truth on our side." Sansa hugged him briefly, then stepped away, brushing a tear from her cheek. "We'll face whatever comes next. Together." He nodded, pride shining through the fatigue. Together. Now get some rest. Tomorrow you'll no doubt have your share of tasks again. Gossip to gather, rumors to parse. The small council meets at midday, and I want you to stay close." She agreed, and they continued along the corridor, heading for their chambers. The hush of evening settled over the Red Keep, broken only by the footfalls of the occasional guard or the distant murmur of voices. Though war brewed on the horizon, King's Landing felt more at peace than it had in many moons. The false king was dethroned, and Ned Stark was not locked in a black cell. Indeed, Sansa marveled at how different everything might have been if not for the smallest choices she had made. The stray questions, the determined search for overheard secrets. It felt surreal to think of it, but she would not linger on the might-have-beens. She had chosen, she had acted, and she had saved her father from the fate that once loomed. In the quiet of her room, she readied for bed, reflecting on the transformations in her life. Once, she had been a dreaming girl who believed that the capital was a city of wonders, a place where songs came true. But the true wonder, she had learned, was surviving the illusions to discover a deeper sense of self. She climbed under the coverlet, her mind drifting to the tasks the next day might bring, a myriad of small details to gather or confirm, gleaning which lords might side with Stannis wholeheartedly and which hovered on the edge of defiance. Perhaps she would do as she had done before, visit the kitchens, the stables, the sept, the corners where servants whispered. She would take her place quietly, listening, sorting truth from rumor. It was a subtle art, but she was learning it well. Her last thoughts before she surrendered to sleep were of Winterfell. She pictured the quiet courtyards dusted with snow, the warm glow of hearth fires behind those great gray walls. She pictured her mother's smile, her sister's running feet. She wondered if a day would come soon when they could be together again, away from the Red Keep's manipulations. For now, she understood, they must remain. Duty bound them here until the realm was truly at peace. Yet, for the first time in many nights, Sansa slept without visions of swords falling or her father's head on a spike. She slept with a cautious hope that they might endure, that a new kind of future might be forged, one shaped by the truth they had revealed and the unity they strove to protect. Morning greeted the city with a red-gold sunrise creeping over the horizon. Sansa rose and wrapped herself in a simple gown, then made her way out into the courtyard below the Tower of the Hand. She took a few moments in the fresh air, letting the mild warmth settle on her. The sound of training swords from the practice yard punctuated the hushed nights in Stannis's livery sparring with some of Renly's men, or possibly with Stark guards. She watched them from a distance, reflecting on how forcibly the city had changed in so short a span. She took a circuitous route toward the small council chamber, noting how the guards posted in the Red Keep now wore the stag sigil or at least bore its emblem pinned somewhere. The subtle shift in livery was one of the ways the new regime established its control. Where once Lannister red and gold had dominated, now it was black and gold, the barbed antlers of Stannis's line, or the crown stag that had once been Robert's. Yet not everyone had changed or left. She spotted a few uneasy men wearing patched cloaks or half-concealed lion emblems. They bowed stiffly as she passed. It seemed they had no choice but to remain if they wished for a chance at future pardon. By the time she reached the small council chamber, the meeting had already begun. Ned had told her she could attend quietly, so she slipped in and found a seat along the wall. At the table sat King Stannis at the head, Ned Stark to his right, and an assortment of counselors, Ser Davos, who had been named Master of Ships, Varys the Spider, who had kept his position as Master of Whisperers, and a couple of other newly appointed men from the Stormlands. Peter Baelish and Pycelle were notably absent. Pycelle was in disgrace, and Baelish apparently had not been named to any new position. Sansa wondered if he was biding his time. Stannis was in the midst of discussing the city's finances. The crown is deeply in debt, he said in a curt tone. Robert squandered gold on tournaments and feasts, and the Lannisters demanded interest we cannot easily pay now that they are in open rebellion. We owe coin to the Iron Bank of Bravos as well. This must be remedied. I will not rule a realm that cannot pay its debts. Ned inclined his head. We must find new revenue or cut expenditures. Perhaps we can appeal to the Tyrells for a loan. They are flush with gold from Highgarden's bountiful harvests. Stannis frowned. Borrow more? A precarious approach. Still, we might have no choice until the realm is stable. As for the Lannisters, they can wait. I will not fill Tywin's coffers when he threatens us with steel. If we must fight him, the coin will go to the war effort. Ser Davos spoke softly. War is expensive, Your Grace. We might see to negotiating with the Iron Bank at least, so they do not withhold loans or fund any rival cause. They do not care about the shape of the Iron Throne, only about their coin. Stannis tapped his fingers on the table. So we must beg Bravos for leniency. Very well, draft a letter, Davos, stating that the crown acknowledges its debt and will pay as soon as conditions allow. Varys offered a little bow from his seat. If I might add, Your Grace, the small folk have endured much unrest. A gesture of goodwill, lowering certain port tariffs or distributing bread at cost, could earn you favor. We must be mindful of the people's hearts, lest they become a weapon for your enemies. Stannis gave him a stony glance. I am not Robert to buy love with lavish feasts. Yet I see the sense in what you say. Let it be done on a modest scale. They continued the meeting, moving from finances to matters of law enforcement, then to the threat of Tywin's forces. Sansa observed quietly, her mind wandering. Though King Stannis was not a warm man, she could see a stern discipline in him, a seriousness that might serve the realm better than Robert's careless extravagance ever had. He was not beloved, but perhaps he could be respected, and if Ned's counsel tempered his severity, they might prevent the worst of war. At last, Stannis dismissed them, rising from the table with the air of a man who bore great burdens. As the others filed out, Ned and Sansa lingered, father and daughter exchanging a look. Ned gave her a subtle nod, as if to say, "This is the path we are on. Let us walk it with clear eyes." She smiled back, faint but resolved. In the corridor outside, they encountered Renly, leaning against a column as though waiting. He gestured for Ned to join him. "Might we speak privately?" he asked. Sansa made to step away, but Renly added, "You may stay as well, Lady Sansa, if you wish. You've proven you have a discerning ear." Curious, Sansa followed them into a small alcove, out of the flow of passing servants. Renly regarded Ned with a flicker of uncertainty. "My brother rules now. I accept that. But I fear Stannis's rule will be as rigid as iron. Already the Stormlords grumble that he lacks Robert's charm, that his justice is severe. My question is, how do we avoid uprisings from the very men we rely on? How do we keep the Lannisters from courting them with gold and the promise of an easier king?" Ned answered thoughtfully, "We show them that Stannis is just, if not genial. We demonstrate stability, adherence to the law. We unify the great houses by ensuring they have a place in the new order. It may not be swift or easy, Renly, but it can be done." Renly sighed. "A tall order. I only hope it works. The alternative is civil war on every front. Already the Tyrells are pacified for the moment, but what if they grow dissatisfied? What if the Dornish, still resentful over what happened to Princess Elia, rise up?" He raked a hand through his hair. "All I wanted was a peaceful realm under a king the people could love." Sansa hesitated, then spoke softly. "Sometimes it isn't love that keeps a realm together, my lord. It's respect, or fear of what might come otherwise. Perhaps Stannis can earn enough respect to hold it." Renly blinked, then let out a low, dry chuckle. "Astute, Lady Sansa. Yes, fear can be a powerful ally. I only wish it didn't have to be so." With a bow, he took his leave, cloak swirling around him, leaving Ned and Sansa to resume their walk through the keep's halls. Time wore on. A letter arrived from Tywin Lannister, an ultimatum rejecting Stannis's kingship, demanding the release of Cersei and Joffrey, threatening to raise the Riverlands if his demands were not met. Another letter arrived from Robb Stark in Winterfell, pledging the North's support for Ned's rightful king, and requesting Ned's leave to muster a small force if war came. That letter put tears in Ned's eyes. He was glad to see that the North stood ready, though he dreaded the thought of taking his son to war. Stannis responded to Tywin's threats with chilly defiance. The lines were drawn. The stage was set for confrontation on the battlefield or at the negotiating table. The city braced for the possibility of siege. Blacksmiths hammered day and night, forging new weapons and armor. King Stannis commanded the gatehouses strengthened, the walls patrolled. If Tywin tried to force his way in, he would find King's Landing more prepared than it had been in many years. In the midst of these warlike preparations, Sansa continued in her quiet role, observing, delivering subtle bits of intelligence, reassuring her father that rumors of infiltration or sabotage were only rumors, or passing along the occasional clue about Lannister men who might still lurk in the city's underbelly. The Queen and Joffrey remained under guard. The tension in the Red Keep diminished somewhat after that final scuffle, but the greater tension in the realm rose day by day. Yet, for all the fear, Sansa found solace in her father's presence. She found unexpected camaraderie with the gentler knights among Stannis's retinue, men who treated her with courtesy tinged by respect for her role in saving Ned. She discovered that some recognized how unusual it was for the Hand's daughter to have played such a part in uncovering the Lannister secrets. "You did the realm a service," one knight said to her quietly, the first time she had heard such direct praise from an outsider. She blushed, thanking him softly. Autumn deepened, the winds turning cooler off the Blackwater. Far to the north, winter might already be spreading its first frosts. Sansa thought often of Winterfell's Godwood, the red leaves drifting on the water, her mother's presence. She had grown older in spirit, she felt, in these few months. One day, if the gods were kind, she would walk beneath those ancient weirwoods again. Finally, word came that Tywin's host was on the march, crossing the Riverlands. King Stannis declared he would ride out to meet them rather than allow them to besiege the city. Ned counseled caution, urging that a strong garrison remain in King's Landing in case of trickery. Stannis agreed. The city watch would hold the walls while half of Stannis's men and the allied lords marched to confront Tywin on open ground. Ned, as Hand, was left behind to oversee the capital's defense. Though he offered to ride in person, Stannis insisted the city could not be left to lesser men in such a crisis. Before leaving, Stannis addressed the crowd in the Red Keep's courtyard. Sansa stood with her father to one side as the newly crowned king declared his intentions. I ride to bring the false lions to heel. Let all true subjects keep the king's peace or face my wrath. By the rightful laws of succession I claim the Iron Throne, and those who defy me defy the realm itself. The throng was silent, respectful but not cheering as they might for Robert. Stannis did not seem bothered by the lack of cheers. He led his knights out through the massive gates, the banners of the flaming heart stag fluttering in the wind, a sight half the city gaped at. Ned placed a hand on Sansa's shoulder as they watched the soldiers pass. War is a bitter thing, he murmured. I hope Stannis can find a victory swiftly, or else we may be in for a long, bloody struggle. Sansa swallowed, watching the columns of men vanish down the winding roads. If it spares the city from a siege, perhaps it's the better way. They turned to re-enter the keep. Days turned to a fortnight, then more, as news traveled slowly. Scouts reported skirmishes near the Trident, but a full-scale battle had yet to unfold. Tensions simmered. People in the city hoarded food, uncertain if harvests would arrive. Ned worked from dawn till dusk, ensuring the Red Keep's defenses remained ready, writing letters to Robb in the north, to the Tullis in Riverrun. Sansa accompanied him as best she could, offering small comforts, a calm presence at council sessions, a note of courtesy when receiving worried lords. She was no warrior, but she had learned something about how to ease tension with gentle words. It was a skill once taught by Septa Mordane, how a lady might keep the household together in times of strife. Now, that skill served a realm in waiting. At last, a raven arrived bearing urgent tidings. Tywin and Stannis had met in battle near the Gold Road. The Lannister army, though numerous, had been surprised by a sudden flanking maneuver led by Ser Davos. The fighting was fierce, but in the end, Tywin's lines broke. Ser Jaime Lannister was captured trying to rally a rearguard. Tywin himself barely escaped with a fraction of his force retreating west. Casualties were high on both sides, but Stannis had claimed victory. Cheers erupted in King's Landing at the news, if only out of relief that the Lannister threat might be receding. Ned Stark read the dispatch, then exhaled deeply. Jaime is captured. That may force Tywin to negotiate or at least hesitate. Sansa felt a wave of relief so strong it nearly made her knees weak. If the Lannisters were beaten on the field, perhaps the war was all but won. Perhaps the realm would not drown in blood. What will Stannis do next? She asked quietly. Ned folded the Raven's letter. Likely press his advantage, or else demand Tywin's immediate surrender and the release of any Lannister strongholds. If Tywin continues to defy him, more battles may follow. But capturing Jaime is a critical blow. The Kingslayer was Tywin's best commander. Without him, Tywin stands alone. In the days that followed, more ravens arrived. Stannis occupied key fortresses along the Gold Road, giving him a route toward Casterly Rock if needed. Rumors said Tywin was attempting to gather what men he could, but with Jaime taken and the realm largely accepting Stannis, his cause was bleak. Some lords in the Westerlands might prefer to yield rather than see their lands ravaged again. Stannis's letter to Ned included the line, "Prepare a cell for the Kingslayer. I shall bring him to King's Landing so justice may be done." Sansa couldn't help but think of how differently all this might have gone if Ned had been executed instead of living to help shape the realm's response. Her father was the anchor that held everything steady. Finally, near the start of the new moon, King Stannis returned to King's Landing with his victorious host. They marched in through the same gates they had left, battered but proud, bringing wagons of captured Lannister arms and the prisoner himself, Ser Jaime, sullen in chains. Tywin had fled to Casterly Rock, but the shock of his defeat and the captivity of his golden son might soon bring him to heel. The city roared with mixed emotions, fear of further war, but also hope that the crisis was ending. A grand ceremony was called in the throne room. Stannis ascended the Iron Throne, the realm's lords in attendance. Ned stood at his side as Hand, and Sansa stood near the dais, heart pounding with the awareness that this was a moment of history. Jaime was brought forth, manacled, escorted by Ser Davos and 2 knights of the Kingsguard now loyal to Stannis. Cersei was also brought from her cell to witness, as was Joffrey, each guarded tightly. The hush in the hall was absolute. Stannis pronounced the charges, murder of King Aerys, though that had once been excused by Robert, conspiracy with Cersei to hide her incest, and any role in crimes committed against Jon Arryn. Jaime sneered. I did not kill Jon Arryn. Your sister did that, or so the rumors say. He cast a contemptuous look at Cersei. As for incest, yes, I betted my sister. I'd bet her again. She is all I care for. Punish me if you must, but do not pretend you do it for honor. Murmurs of revulsion rippled through the crowd. Cersei stared at Jaime with wide eyes, but said nothing. Stannis's face was like stone. You stand guilty of high treason at the least. In war, a traitor's life is forfeit. Yet you once saved the city from the Mad King's wildfire. For that I shall grant you the black if you choose it. Take the black and serve the realm upon the wall, or die here before the throne. Jaime glared. The wall? I am no crow. I'll not freeze with criminals. Better to die with sword in hand. Stannis gestured to the guards. As you will. The men seized Jaime, hauling him upright. The hush was broken only by faint gasps. Cersei shrieked, lunging forward. No. You cannot kill him. She turned wild eyes on Ned Stark, on Stannis, on the Watchers. He is a Lannister. My father will never yield if you do this. Stannis's gaze was unwavering. I do not bend to threats, woman. Jaime Lannister chose his fate. Cersei sank to her knees, face twisting. She had no more arguments. Joffrey looked on, pallid, though his eyes flickered with some mixture of horror and fascination. Ned averted his gaze from Sansa, not wanting her to witness another execution. But she stood firm. She had steeled herself for all that the Red Keep might entail. The sentence was carried out swiftly. Jaime Lannister, the Kingslayer, died beneath a headsman's sword, undone by the same pitiless system he had once scorned. Cersei wailed, collapsing in sobs. Joffrey gave a small, strangled cry. The throne room was silent otherwise. Sansa felt shaken but not surprised. She understood that in a land where the sword decided justice, this outcome was hardly shocking. Yet it hammered home how far events had traveled from the illusions she once held. There were no songs for such an ending. Stannis dismissed the assembly, commanding that the body be prepared for return to the west if Tywin so desired. Then Cersei and Joffrey were taken away again to their confinement, with Cersei's howls echoing in the vaulted hall. Ned, pale-faced, guided Sansa out. She realized tears stood in his eyes, though perhaps for the tragedy of the realm rather than for the death of the Kingslayer. A sad day, he said softly. But perhaps it will allow the realm to heal. Tywin has lost his son. He may think twice before continuing the war. She clung to his arm, letting him lead her away. The Red Keep felt both lighter and darker simultaneously. One threat was removed, but the cost in blood was steep. She prayed that the Lannisters would yield now, that no more children would lose their fathers to the headsman's blade. Word soon reached them that Tywin retreated behind the walls of Casterly Rock, refusing to negotiate. But with most of the realm aligned under Stannis and the Rock isolated, the threat was contained. Gradually, the Seven Kingdoms began to settle. Stannis presided over the realm from King's Landing, forging new alliances. Renly served as a key mediator, bridging the gap between Stannis's severity and the lords who yearned for a more personable figure. Ned Stark, as hand, labored every day to patch rifts, restore order, and see that justice was done for those harmed by Lannister aggression. Sansa found her role continuing, though with less urgency now. She did not need to glean conspiracies at every corner, but still she offered an attentive ear, a watchful presence. King's Landing would never be truly safe, but for the first time it felt as though House Stark was not an outsider in the city's swirl of power. Months passed. Winter crept closer, and talk of the realm's readiness for the cold years ahead filled council meetings. Sansa found herself thinking of Winterfell, of the family members still far away. Finally, Ned approached King Stannis with a request to be allowed to return home. Stannis, though reluctant to lose the stability Ned provided, saw the sense. The North needed its lord, and the realm was no longer teetering on the brink of immediate collapse. The Lannisters remained sullen but contained. And so, on a crisp autumn morning, Ned Stark and Sansa prepared for departure. Their wagon train was modest but sufficient, guards flying the dire wolf banner, supplies for the long road, a retinue of loyal men. Stannis summoned them for a final audience in the throne room. Sansa could not help but recall how often she had stood here in terror of what might unfold. Now she stood with quiet confidence. Stannis, seated on the Iron Throne, studied Ned. You have my thanks, Lord Stark, for exposing the false heirs and ensuring the realm's stability. You are welcome here, if ever you wish to return. Ned bowed. I am sworn to serve your grace. If you call, we will come. But I must see to the north, especially with the threat of winter's arrival. Stannis gave a brisk nod. Well said. Go in peace. The realm stands stronger for your loyalty. A flicker of something like respect showed in his eyes. Then he gestured for Sansa to step forward. And you, Lady Sansa. Your father has told me how your vigilance saved him from an untimely fate. Consider yourself a friend to the crown. If you have need of the king's justice, send a raven. She curtsied deeply. Thank you, your grace. Strange, she thought, how she had once yearned for recognition from a king in the capital. Now she felt only a calm acceptance of this final courtesy. Her illusions had died, but in their place stood something more real, a sense of her own worth and the knowledge she had saved her father. They departed the throne room, collecting final farewells from Ser Davos, from Renly, from Ser Barristan, who pressed Sansa's hand and bade her good fortune. Littlefinger stood in the shadows, offering a mocking half-smile but no words. Varys gave them a polite bow, wishing them safe travels. Outside, the wagons waited in the courtyard, the sun shining bright on the day of their leaving. Ned helped Sansa mount a sturdy palfrey. Before she climbed into the saddle, she turned and looked back at the Red Keep's towers, shimmering in the autumn sunlight. She remembered the day she had arrived, full of naive hopes. She remembered the battlements at dawn, the tang of the sea, the swirl of illusions. Now, the illusions were gone, replaced by a weight of experience and the certain knowledge that her father lived, that her family was safer than before. She swung astride the palfrey. Ned mounted his own horse and they rode out through the gates, accompanied by Stark men. The people of King's Landing lined the streets. Some jeered, some cheered. Most simply watched with guarded curiosity. Sansa lifted her chin, gazing at them without malice or adoration, only recognition that they were part of the realm she had helped shape. Then the city walls fell behind them. The open road to the north stretched ahead, winding over hills touched by the turning leaves. Winter would come, but they would face it at home in Winterfell's embrace. As they rode, father and daughter exchanged a soft smile. Sansa knew the memory of the capital's intrigues would never fully fade, but it would serve as armor of a different sort, wisdom. She had uncovered betrayal, saved her father, and played a role in unmasking a false king. The songs would never do justice to the complexity of that story. Yet she felt no regret, only a quiet sense of purpose. She was Sansa Stark of Winterfell, a daughter who had refused to let her father die, a girl who had grown beyond her illusions into something stronger. Their horses' hooves clopped against the King's Road, and King's Landing receded behind them, brick by brick. The autumn wind swept through Sansa's hair as she glanced once more at the southern sky, where gulls wheeled above distant sails. Then she turned her eyes forward, toward the home she had left behind and the new season that awaited them all.